Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto becomes strongest exorcist part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. History, the events of the past that stand unchanging no matter how much wants to try and alter them, and in war history is recorded by the winners of a war. Even if recorded wrong, history does not change. The only thing that possible change history would be adding something to the past and hoping that the changes made would be enough to derail the future. That was why those taken from their own timelines, and added to another timeline, have always struggled through a changing past, and a future that can only lead to the unknown. The sky looks the same as it did yesterday. A young male with golden blonde hair and the brightest of blue eyes said lightly as he looked up at the sky. This young man looked to be no older than 17 years old, his wild hair waving in the wind lightly as he stared at the clouds up in the sky, the gentle rays of the sun bathing his already slightly tanned skin in the warm light that he assumed was the same no matter what timeline a person lived in, or what part of the world you made your home. He lazily leaned the back of his head against a large broadsword that was colored a soulfully deep ocean blue that was an inch or two taller than he was tall, and almost as wide as he body. Surrounding the edge of the blade was a golden edge that seemed to be so sharp that without trying it could cut through steel. The handle of the swerve that was sticking up in the air was the length of 3 hands with a golden half-circle guard on the handle to protect the hands. The sword itself had no guard, but with its size it didn't really need one. This sword was the Durandal, one of the 4 most powerful holy swords to ever be forged by the God of the Bible, and it was his sword. Upon coming to this world as a child, malnourished and confused, he had been found by a sister from the Vatican, where he learned that he had an amazingly high affinity for holy swords. He was glad, because he had only been 6 years old when he had found himself in this whole new place, without a home to call his own. So ever since then he had been raised and cared for by the church, who trained him in the art of wielding holy swords with his fellow pupils, though most of them couldn't naturally wield true holy swords and had to use the mass-produced copies that were far less powerful than a real holy sword. He had been clothed, well-fed, loved, and he had been given intense training. Then he had been rewarded. He had received the Durandal on his 9th birthday, and since then he had been trained in wielding it to the max potential. He used this sword with pride, knowing that he had been entrusted with a sword of this power thanks to the faith that others had in him to not abuse the sword. The other person that had been proven capable of wielding the sword had been kind to Naruto, even though she had been stuck using a less powerful sword than she could have. But thankfully she showed that she was the only other natural holy sword user in the Vatican in their age group, and had been given other of the 4 strongest holy swords to complement her weaker holy sword, while Naruto himself had been given a weaker holy sword to complement his Durandal. Standing up, the young man stretched his body, before he dusted the grass from his clothes with a grimace. This young man wore a very strange outfit given to him as a birthday present by one of his few friends that had stayed with him at the church over the years, and even went with him when he ventured out of the church into foreign lands, though he had to make one little modification to make it not humiliating for him to be seen wearing in public. His clothes were black. The top was a black-colored unitard that was made from a very strong material while sticking to his skin and allowing for high flexibility and stealth in the battlefield when at night or in dark areas. The top extended halfway up his neck, and had short sleeves that went 1/4 of the way to his elbows. This unitard was the reason that he had to modify the clothes a little, since it was made to also cover the crotch similar to short shorts, short enough to have the same outline as panties. So Naruto made up for this by covering his modesty by using black skinny jeans to hide the fact that this was a unitard. The untard had straps and lines covering the shoulders, with a line coming from each shoulder and going down into his pants to the bottom of the unitard once more. He was thankful he wore pants with this revealing outfit that showed the definition in his abs. Sitting pretty on the center of his chest though was a single silver cross hanging from his neck, showing his faith to the good Lord, and his relation to the church itself. Over his hands he wore fingerless tight gloves from the same black material as his unitard, and the gloves extended halfway up his forearm, where it ended in a thicker black strap to keep from the falling out of place. He wore a loose belt around his waist, not even connected to his pants, that had a small holders on it to carry small items in each holder, and on the front of the belt was a silver-colored circle that belt the belt together around his waist. This belt held bottle of holy water, a devil's natural weakness, something that he used on a regular basis in exorcisms and the like. He made sure that he was always prepared for anything that could happen when dealing with devils, so the best way to do that would be to carry one of their natural weaknesses on him. Just a few drops caused devils immense physical pain, burning their skin like acid and weakening their minds and powers. On the left side of the same belt was slightly bigger case that was rectangle-shaped, and big enough to hold a hand-sized book. He wore black boots with anklets on them to help him keep a good balance, while protecting his ankles from low blows. Black socks could be seen, and they were made from the same material as the rest of his clothes, and they continued and vanished into his pants. The final piece of clothing that he wore were black sunglasses that he kept on the top of his head, the sunglasses shaped like triangles that pointed out a little wider than at the middle. Just because he was with the church, didn't mean he couldn't add a little cool to his uniform. The pants had to be there so that he could retain some dignity when wearing a unitard, since now people couldn't tell, just that he was wearing an extremely tight shirt. He was Naruto, formerly Naruto Uzumaki, having abandoned his last name when he became an orphan living at the church and training to be an exorcist in the name of the Holy Father. He figured that having a last name served his no purpose. But his first name was something he needed to keep for some reason, so these days he was just known by Naruto. Even legally he had no last name. He lived in Rome, the Vatican to be exact. He kept his Japanese-styled name frankly, it confused everyone. Naruto was a blonde-haired man with blue eyes and tanned, but still skin that was Western. He honestly looked like he was of European heritage, or possible even Italian. When people heard his name, they normally gave him confused looks, or simply ignored his name and referred to him as simply Father since he worked with the church, and was a perfectly qualified exorcist. He loved being a Christian, because the thought of a person that loved him despite his faults, waiting for him in heaven, was a great thought to him. Naruto placed his hand on the grip of his sword before the entire sword started to glow golden and vanish into midair, his sword storing itself away for the moment. Naruto flicked his sunglasses over his eyes, with the longer sides to his bangs, which went to his whiskered cheeks, hiding the pointed tips of the sunglasses slightly, before he shook his hair and let the points become visible again. Naruto put his hands in his pockets, and started to walk towards the church's general direction with a genuine smile on his face. He was currently in a park a fair distance away from the church, since he liked being in the Villa Ada part. Being the largest park in Rome, he preferred being in such a wide open space. He was just a naturally free spirit, so being cooped up inside of a building for too long would drive him stir crazy after a long period of time. He passed by the people of the city that were in the park, and they all greeted him with warm smiles. His work as an exorcist was no secret, though the details weren't general knowledge. The people of this city all knew him and his partner, who were becoming rather famous as of late. "Good morning, Father. Another stroll through the park?" A young woman in her late 20s greeted him. She had strawberry blonde hair with brown eyes, her skin a lighter shade than his own, and as she walked she was pushing a stroller with a young baby boy wearing little clothes, while she herself wore a light green dress, with a black purse hanging from her arm. Her hair went down to her shoulders, and she had a light amount of freckles on her skin. "Yes, Adriana, it was a beautiful day. I hope you and little Bernardo enjoyed the sun and clear sky. I have been hearing it would start raining later today." Naruto greeted back, and offered some helpful advice while he was at it. Adriana had called him 2 weeks ago so that he could perform a small exorcism on her home, having suspected that she was being bothered by angry spirits, so Naruto had come over and done his work. Since then he had been happy to hear that she hadn't been having any more problems with her home, showing he had done his job properly. "Thank you, Father. Say hey to Father Bernardo, say hey," the kind mother said to her son, and Naruto leaned down with the little boy reaching up to play with whisker birthmarks on Naruto's face. But Naruto only let the baby grab his pinky, before he smiled warmly, and stood up before he and Adriana said their goodbyes. This having only been a brief meeting, Naruto continued to walk, before he raised his hand and caught a bag tossed to him by a man standing a few dozen feet away from him, a burly man with a kind, if cocky, smile on her face, a bushy mustache on his face while he wore a stained apron in front of his normal clothes, and he had slicked back black hair. "Heading back home already, Father? Take those, free of charge. Keep up the great work," the man said, and Naruto opened the bag to various flavored tea bags, so with a smile he accepted him and gave the man a smile. "Thank you, Charles, this is much appreciated. Tea has become a luxury lately. It is very nice of you to give me these. I will be sure to share these with the other orphans and Zenovia when I get home." Naruto thanked once more honestly, before he continued on his way, enjoying the bright smiles people gave him when they saw him. No matter how many people smiled at him, he was always happy when somebody offered him kind words. It made him happy to know that people enjoyed him being around them. Charles went back to the selling of his teas at the stand he ran, while Naruto looked at the sky as he walked. Zenovia was the name of his partner, the person that he had technically competed against for the possession of Durandal, his best friend who he had been together with training and learning with over the last 11 years of his life when he woke up lost and confused near the church. And since then she had been his partner for every single mission the two had been on that involved their jobs as exorcists. Though occasionally one of the newer exorcists would join them on a mission. The two had lived together for years, so they knew each other's fighting styles in and out, as well as the abilities the others had. Before he had ended up with the church, Naruto had been training to become what was called a ninja in his homeland, and had been in the middle of his first year in school to become a ninja. Unlike other human exorcists, Naruto knew how to channel the energy inside of his body to increase his speed and strength. He could flow his chakra through various parts of his body and increase his strength by a certain amount, increase his speed, and it made him a stamina freak that could go on for hours in whatever he tried doing. Using his chakra, he could even use it as a form of attack by pushing it through his fists and feet, before pushing it and attacking his enemy's life force directly, something that was almost impossible to defend again. Of course, he had been forbidden from using this against humans, but against devils and fallen angels he had no such restriction. Zenovia had admitted to him that she was jealous of his ability with his inner energy, and how he could use it as a brute strength-enhancing technique, or a direct assault on the enemy. It was hard finding a person that could teach him more about this energy inside of him, because he knew that learning how to master it, and that mysterious energy that resided even deeper inside of him, would be a major boon to him. Nobody had seemingly heard of this energy in the church, so he had pretty much given up on finding a person that would be willing to try and teach him how to learn this energy. So he was mostly self-taught. Interesting fact. Apparently he could use this energy to walk on water, something he learned after a lot of experimentation. He was still experimenting with his chakra, trying to learn to use it to form the jutsu that he could remember seeing when he had dreamed of being a ninja. But he sucked at remembering hand signs, so he was trying to learn in a different way. Naruto stopped by the street, before he blinked when he saw his partner waiting for him while leaning up against the side of his motorcycle, the mode of transportation they used to go out of city for any such jobs that needed them to travel out of walking distance. His motorcycle was a red and black Moto Guzzi with enough room on the seat to fit 2 people, and he had decorated his bike with the inscriptions of crosses. Other than his own add-ons, nothing else was strange or unique about this bike, other than the fact that Zenovia should not have ridden his bike over here, unless she pushed it. Because unlike him, she was not licensed in driving anything, period. Zenovia was a young woman his age, 17, with chin-length blue hair with a green fringe on the right side of her bangs. She had light skin, and her eyes were a striking dark yellow color, and her body was that of a toned, beautiful, young woman. Unlike him, her uniform had long gloves that went up to the middle of her biceps, and she wore no pants or belt, showing that her boots extended up to mid-thigh with straps on them. This was why Naruto wore pants over his clothes, so that people didn't see that on him. He was okay with others seeing the top like that, but not the bottom anyway. Unlike other girls in their age group, Zenovia had large breasts, being both amazingly in volume and how they remained perky despite being far surpassing the average woman breasts that were being showed off in the tight unitard of their battle uniform, a uniform they both wore in and out of battle. You never knew when you were going to be attacked after all, but normally Zenovia wore a white hooded cloak to cover her body. They were in their hometown though. When you spend 11 years in a town, it become a part of you enough so that it is your hometown, just not his homeland. Like himself, she possessed 2 holy swords, one of the 4 strongest, and a fragment of one of the 4 strongest that had been broken. While she had originally been thought to be the Wilder of Durandal, he had proven to be a Morphite Wilder, so she had been given another holy sword called the Dragon Slayer Sword, another legendary sword that also went by the name Ascalon, a sword that she had been given so that the 2 of them could fight with each other without one being too far superior to the other, an equal partnership with neither being the leader because of strength, though Naruto was far stronger in unarmed combat. They each carried one of the 7 Excalibur fragments of the holy sword Excalibur, one of the 4 greatest swords. Zenovia was like himself, in which she kept her swords stored away when not in use, but could call on them at a moment's notice. Though this only applied to her Ascalon, like with Naruto's Durandal, their other swords were kept on them at all times. She had her Excalibur fragment wrapped up in bandages that could be taken off in a flash. She used the Excalibur Destruction Fragment, a sword of awesome raw power and cutting ability, a sword that was almost as large as his Durandal with axe-like guards and a double-edged blade that ended in 3 pointed spikes. His Excalibur fragment was also on his body, though he had it hidden using the special ability of his fragment to change shape. Using the shape-shifting powers of his Excalibur mimic, he could make it change shape into almost any shape of weapon he could think of, or sometimes not even weapons. Naruto's sunglasses seemed to glint. Yes, Naruto used the mimic ability of his other holy sword to make them take the shape of sunglasses. Naruto walked to Zenovia, and made it clear that they were both the same height at 5 feet and 5 inches tall, about average heights for their age, with Naruto still growing at the moment. "Please tell me you didn't drive my bike here," Naruto requested blankly, hiding how nervous he was at the fact that she might have rode his bike. "I pushed it here. We have orders directly from the Vatican. A stray devil has been rumored to have appeared in Florence. We have been ordered to exterminate it before coming back," Zenovia said, knowing how much relief she brought to Naruto when she said that she didn't ride his bike, when she honestly didn't. She just wanted to start the mission as soon as possible, so coming here to tell him about it, but then going back to get his bike, would take much longer than just bringing it along with her by pushing it. She was more than strong enough to push a bike without trouble, a big motorized bike it may be. "Well, that is a downer. It is supposed to rain later today," Naruto whispered to himself. He wasn't worried about his clothes or his bike, since both were waterproof, but he was worried about driving the road when it was raining. It will be a long drive, but slaying the devil takes top priority. Going by plane would cost too much, so it would be cheaper to use your motorcycle and take the slightly longer way, before coming back, Zenovia commented as she reached at his bike and put her own, as in she owned it, blue helmet with a screen in front of her face, before she placed it over her head and tilted up the screen to look him face to face. Now he understood why she wasn't wearing the white hood, because she didn't want it to weigh them down by getting wet, while their battle attire were warm and waterproof. The only part they had to worry about was the diamond-shaped area above their butts that was made to allow the clothes to breathe better. It would feel weird having cold water just hit part of their lower backs, while most of them stayed dry. Somebody is eager for a fight, can't argue though. Stray devils are disgusting creatures, so we better go slay it, and who knows if it will attack the plane before it hit the ground. It is better to just drive there, more cost-effective too, Naruto said as he got onto his motorcycle and took his sunglasses off. The sunglasses glowed brightly. Before they were replaced with goggles better made for driving and keeping water from his eyes. He honestly didn't care about his hair getting wet, and if they were about to wreck, then Naruto could turn them into a helmet in a split second. Or just have both himself and Zenovia jump off the bike should they have to save themselves. A bike wasn't worth their lives. Hurry, any time wasted is time that the stray can be devouring humans. Zenovia urged him, so Naruto started his bike up and made his way down the road, before stopping at a sign with a twitching eye. Before he looked and started going again, knowing the roads to the city like the back of his own hand. She didn't have to urge him to get him to understand how important them hurrying was. Well, not really, since stray devils normally only became active at night, and they would be getting there around night, so they could look for it around the time it started to become active. Sunlight weakened devils slightly, and while it affected stronger devils less, most stray devils were weak enough that sunlight weakened them a good amount, so they hid themselves away during the day, before becoming active at night. Zenovia leaned forward and wrapped her arms around his waist, pressing her chest against his back so that she could hang one, while he started to go a little faster, reaching the speed limit. The road out of the city was a straight shot without many turns, so they could go a little above the speed limit, and Naruto was a good driver. He just didn't like driving to a location with the devil in the rain. You never knew what might jump out at you. The job of an exorcist was a difficult one. So what kinds of powers should we be worried about from this stray devil? Like who was the devil that they abandoned? Naruto asked as he and Zenovia walked through the rain, swords already out and ready to be used the second they came across the devil that they were being charged with killing. They had arrived in the city that they were at a few hours ago, and the two of them had been walking around after dropping off Naruto's bike at one of the local churches, and the nuns there promised to take real good care of his bike, even promising to take it to go get refueled while they hunt down and kill the stray devil that had been murdering people around here the last few days. I don't know, but the murdered bodies have all been close to the water. Maybe it is a demon that has power over water, so possibly a servant of the Citri family. Zenovia muttered just loud enough over the rain so that Naruto could hear her, before he groaned loudly. If that was true, then they were dealing with somebody possibly proficient in water magic while in the middle of a rainstorm. That was a huge disadvantage right there, one that would make this a lot harder than it had to be, and honestly, he would rather had a devil as weak as possible in terms of fighting ability before slaying it. Leave nothing to chance, give them nothing to make into an advantage. Though devils, fallen angels, and angels had a treaty going on saying that they wouldn't attack each other, Naruto knew that the ones at this point with the biggest chance of igniting a war were the fallen angels and the stray devils. Both of those factions needed to be killed off as soon as possible before another war started, or the angels would be wiped out unless God interfered with them. At this time, the church/angel faction was the technical weakest of the three factions, technical from numbers and the average strength of each angel. They had the advantage though because they could use light, a weakness of devils. The faction with the strongest advantage would have to be the devils, so Naruto and Zenovia were wary around either of the other factions. Two natural holy sword users, they were members of the church, making devils and fallen angels their enemies as well, but they didn't have the same advantages that the supernatural factions had. Well, Naruto kind of did with his extremely strong life force and chakra, but Zenovia didn't, and they were a team. If one went down, then both of them could go down rather quickly. They both knew that in a war between the factions, the holy sword wielders like them would be targeted first before the others of their group were targeted. Holy swords could wipe a devil out with a single well-placed cut. Being both enchanted by light and given superpowers, a holy sword user could take down many devils being before taken down. The fact they each used two of the strongest holy swords forged by God himself while they were big targets. So we are fighting a water demon in the rain when we can barely see? Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow, his sunglass having turned into a short sword made for one hand to hold, and a 2-foot-long blade. I never said it would be an easy fight, just a fight. Zenovia commented, having realized the error in her plan of rushing to the city, despite being in a rainstorm, lightning striking every once in a while harsh winds blew their wet hair around their heads. Though these facts were ignored in favor of they were sensing around for the aura of a devil. Being exorcists, they were well trained in trying to sense out where devils and fallen angels were, because this was not the first time they had been sent out to slay a devil or fallen angels, and this wouldn't be the last time either. What about the last time? New York ring a bell? Naruto asked sarcastically, remembering the last time that Zenovia had rushed them into going to the target location, forgetting that sometimes rushing things was a bad thing. Zenovia herself remembered that time and almost blushed when she remembered how they almost failed their mission because the target had sensed them coming, and ran as far away as possible, before the two of them borrowed a car from a dealer and chased down the devil, before slaying it after they had been chased around by police for 2 hours, with the devil getting out of the city and almost escaping. It took a lot of mind erasing to get the cops off their asses, and Naruto hadn't let Zenovia live down the fact that they had been called two dumb teenage thieves with a bondage fetish, though the word bondage was a bit confusing until Naruto asked somebody what it meant, and he found it hilarious that they had been called something like that, and insulted that the cops had figured out they were stupid just by looking at them. Sure, either of them were geniuses, but they weren't completely dumb until now it was. That was also a fight, but we had to chase it down in a borrowed car first. The car was returned, and the devil slain, mission complete. Zenovia argued back, while Naruto shrugged it off as they continued walking around. They would find the target when they found it, and then they would take it out. There were no resident devils in the area that they knew of, so they didn't need to warn anyone of what they were doing, so all was good right now. Besides the fact that they were dealing with a bloodthirsty monster hell-bent on murder and madness, devils took on mostly human form, while stray devils became monstrous creatures that were controlled by their sins. You totaled the car before returning it, Naruto said back moments later, and Zenovia looked away. She knew she should have let Naruto drive, but she had been in a rush to catch the devil before it escaped. Remember the China incident? Zenovia questioned right back at Naruto, who looked up at the sky while whistling an innocent tune. He remembered the China incident where he was out a huge chunk of the Great Wall of China, and then the higher-ups had to repair it before anyone noticed a large chunk of wall missing from one of the wonders of the world. All because they had been tasked with capturing an excommunicated nun that had been selling the secret locations of the other Excalibur fragments despite the churches that had kicked her out of their religion. Sadly, she had already sold the locations to a fallen angel that got away with the locations before they could capture the nun and bring her back. Since then they had to move the fragments to other churches, and to keep one of the even safer it had been given to a girl that was not a natural holy sword user, Irena Shidu, who worked with them on occasion. She had been given Excalibur Nightmare if memory served correctly, after she had her body modified to be able to use a true holy sword. Yeah, that nun's sacred gear should have been ripped from her the second she tried to sell out secret to the enemy. Stalemate or not, we can't trust devils or fallen angels with the locations of the holy swords. Anyone who betrays God should not be allowed to keep their sacred gear, a gift from God, Naruto said with a frown, and Zenovia agreed fully with that sentiment. Those blessed by God should not turn their backs on their duties to God. It was spitting in God's face, and as a devout Christian she would rather have them be killed in the name of God so that their sins will be forgiven, than let them live and shame God's blessing even further than they already have. She blinked, before she grabbed Naruto's shoulder and turned him to her. Naruto, how has the hunt been going? Zenovia asked with curiosity, while Naruto sighed and looked at the ground. The higher-ups say that the last Excalibur fragment is still lost to us, but I know it has to be out there somewhere. I always wondered why they reforged Excalibur into 7 fragment swords, when they could have just reforged it back into the original sword. Naruto commented dryly, if they had all of the fragments in one place to turn them into new swords with Excalibur's powers, then why not just reforge them into their original form while they had the chance? Why turn them into 7 weaker swords? Humans aren't perfect, Zenovia said after a moment, thinking the exact same thing as Naruto now that it was pointed out to them. They both had a chill go down their spines when they felt the aura of a devil enter their sensing range. Zenovia looked towards Naruto, while he looked back at her with a nod. The two of them jumped up to the top of the nearest building, a 1-story building, which while amazing and almost impossible by human standards, they were better than the normal human, having trained to wield swords that each weigh enough to make a grown man buckle without being able to pick it up. The fact they could move normally while holding these large swords showed that they were more than able to do inhuman feats of strength and speed. They raced towards the area they could still feel the aura coming from, and in the distance they could see the Arno River, though they couldn't see the devil due to the rain. The closer they got though, the more they were able to see large outline of the devil terrorizing the area, and when they dropped from the air and landed, while skidding, on the ground nearby the devil they could see its shape with their own eyes. It was large, easily 30 feet or more tall and sticking from the edge of the water. On top of the main body of the creature was the torso of a young woman, maybe in her early teens, possibly 12 or 13 years old, but her eyes were glowing a demonic red, and her hands was a teenage boy's head that she was devouring with her sharpened shark teeth. Her skin had turned into scales, and her lower body was a mix between a shark and an octopus or squid. The main body was that of a shark, but 20 octopus tentacles 50 feet long were waving around, with sharp-looking stingers from the tips of them. The front of her main body even had a shark mouth, but no eyes on it. The two of them readied their swords, with Naruto holding his in a reverse grip, while Zenovia took a 2-handed stand with hers being held in front of her body. How strong do you think? Naruto asked Zenovia quickly and quietly, using the sounds of the rain to mask his voice while the devil ate the remains of the boy, with the rest of the body parts resting on top of the shark body in front of where her girl's torso was sticking out. The boy was dead already, so as morbid as it was, they were sure that his parents or relatives wouldn't want him to be returned to them like this, so they would use her eating the boy's corpse as time. They could make a plan against her so that the boy could be avenged for his loss. They had seen similar scenes to this one before, though some more bloody and gruesome than others. Chimera-type mutated body, mixed between 2 sea creatures. Favors large body, so I would say not very strong, but in this rain while it is floating in the river we will have trouble getting to it. Zenovia broke down. Stray devils fit 4 different classes. Large body, those that are the weakest and have to eat humans and other creatures to maintain an increased state of power, but they aren't very fast and normally they lose a large amount of brain power with their mutation. Medium body, various parts of their body mutate, but they only grow to maybe twice human size, showing that they were stronger than the weakling that grew huge powers to overcompensate for lack of natural power. These were stronger and smarter, but they normally had really obvious weak points. small body stray devils that only went through a form change, but didn't grow taller or larger, their own power being increased while they kept their ability to think completely intact. Harder to defeat and kill, but they all had the same weak point, being that they had softer skin or easily enrage. Clear body, those that completely stay the same as when they were a normal devil, having a large amount of power and thinking power, the most dangerous out of them all. Large body, it is the problem though, is getting close. We don't know the tentacle speed, and with that length hitting it will be a problem. Not to mention that she can submerge herself in the water. Most likely wanna go fishing? Naruto asked as he jerked his sword hand out, and Excalibur mimic transformed into a long golden fishing rod with silver fishing wire, a golden hook on the end of the wire. Naruto started to swing the rod around and around, building up momentum as he waited for the girl to open her mouth again with narrow eyes. He cast his holy fishing pole and the hook went zooming towards the beast's now open mouth, before hooking on both her tongue and cheek. Naruto grinned before the girl was startled and started to sink down below the surface of the water. Gotcha! Zenovia said as she circled her around Naruto and placed her hands on his pole, before they both started to get dragged forward when the girl trying to go under the water deeper, so Naruto started to reel her in as soon as possible, while Zenovia helped him keep himself on almost dry land. It was still raining, so the ground was still getting wet. It's a big on. Time for that fishing practice to pay off, Naruto shouted as he and Zenovia forced themselves to take a step back while he reeled her in, her head now sticking out from the water, her cheek being stretched more than a little bit as she looked back at them with not a small amount of panic in her eyes. It would seem that her personality was more like an octopus, run when you see even a small amount of trouble, the water around her turning deep black in response to the stray devil trying to escape in any way possible. You haver been fishing before in your life? Zenovia yelled towards him, and he grit his teeth as the two of them hit their backs against a nearby wall, not being able to go any further than they were. The girl's head and upper body was plainly visible, but she was starting to gain the upper hand and go lower into the water again. Naruto using chakra to keep his grip on the holy sword, in fishing pole form, strong enough. I am now, and that is all that matters. Boy, will this be a story to tell my fishing buddies? Naruto shouted playfully, knowing that they were well outside of the tentacle range at the moment, while Zenovia scoffed at Naruto, before they both got completely serious when they started to yank and reel in their biggest catch of the day, and hopefully only catch of the day. Zenovia took a hand off the pole before she reached and held Excalibur Destruction at the ready with a single hand, just in time too when she had to cut down a few tentacles that tried to slice at them, the devil girl screaming in pain at the holy sword inflicted wound, causing way more pain than a normal wound, her demonic energy being forced out through the wound with her blood. The tentacles that were cut off faded away into gold dust that faded into nothing. When a devil was killed like this, their souls were completely destroyed, no hopes of returning for him. Stop playing around already, you should have killed her the second you had her hooked. Zenovia muttered, and Naruto stopped thinking for a moment, when he realized that he could have just done that instead of this entire tug-of-war that they had going on. Naruto jerked the rod again, before the hook inside of the girl's mouth transformed and the devil child was surprised and jerked back when the sword came back to Naruto's hands and turned into the form of a normal sword. Naruto and Zenovia both started to charge towards the devil, a small race between them. Jumping through the air, Naruto slashed her across the small chest and her entire body started to turn into golden dust from the deep cut being given to the relatively weak devil girl, and Zenovia grabbed Naruto by the hand and brought him back onto the ground before he could take a swim in the rapidly moving river, which could have taken him for bad ride. The body of the devil soon completely vanished, leaving no proof that she had ever even existed here in the first place. Sorry, but we still needed to pull her in before she could escape. Unless you can swim and fight underwater at the same time. If that was a skill you mastered, then please let me know in the future. Naruto joked with a smile, while Zenovia sighed and shivered lightly when the cold water of the river shot up and splashed the two of them. Zenovia punched Naruto in the arm second later for his comment, and since both of them were wet already they began to walk back to the church they left his bike at, and hopefully stay there for the night. Waterproof clothes for the win, but his pants were soaked. You know, this might sound weird, but I kind of like the rain right now. Nobody saw us killing a stray, so no need to erase any memories of this incident. Nothing went wrong either. Like the last time we killed a devil near the coast of Florida, I have never had as much sand in my suit as that day, Zenovia said with an uncomfy rub of her butt, the crack of which was showing from the back cut out part of the unitard that was there to let their skin breathe. Sadly, Naruto remembered that as well, and sand in her crack was not something this unitard protected you from. I still remember the rash. Naruto agreed with a groan. Never before had he been so humiliated over such a simple problem. Getting a sand rash was something you didn't admit, not unless the person you are admitting it to also got a rash. I remember the plane ride with the rash. Zenovia commented back at him, and Naruto groaned at that. I remember throwing up in the bathroom after eating bad peanuts on a plane with a rush, Naruto said with a slight smirk, knowing that Zenovia was going to try and one-up him and lengthen what he just said by adding onto it. I remember when the rest of the people on the plans threw up from the bad peanuts after you threw up on the plane ride with a rash, Zenovia said, and Naruto raised his hands in defeat. That was pretty much all that happened after that mission had been finished, and the kill had been a sand-loving crab-like stray devil that had dragged them through the sand for a while before they cut it to pieces. The monster had been covered in crabs as well that it had attracted to them, so they had crabs for dinner that night when they got back home. Have to admit that the crabs were good tasting. Real fresh. Naruto licked his lips at the memory of the good meal, and Zenovia nodded. She had to admit that she really liked the taste of crabs after a hard mission, though the rash kind of sucked for the few days that it stayed. The two of them continued to talk as they walked towards the church, and when they got to the church they were surprised to see that the lights of the church were on, showing shadows in the windows. When they walked through the unlocked doors, they were both surprised when they saw that the nuns of the church were waiting for them with smiles on their faces. Seeing that Naruto and Zenovia came back so soon could only mean that they had taken care of the problem. Honestly, large-bodied stray devils were the easiest to take care of because had to overcompensate for their lack of power with larger bodies. "Welcome back, father, sister," the oldest nun of the church said as she came forward and gently guided the two of them towards the front of the church where a small table was sitting, a few plates of bread and a bowl of soup waiting for them after a job well gone. Naruto and Zenovia both thanked the sister for the food, before they silently started to fill their empty stomachs with their reward, using the soup to add flavor to the bread by dipping it into the soup before eating each bite, after saying their prayers for the meal that is. Naruto enjoyed the meal, even if it wasn't his favorite food that he hadn't had in a few years since that messed up mission to Japan that ended with them having to eat on the run when they learned the person feeding them the food was the stray devil who had lured them into a trap and started to chase them, before they finished eating and killed the tricky bastard. "If it would not be too much of a bother, would we be allowed to stay the night here before returning home tomorrow?" Zenovia asked politely, and the nun nodded her head with a smile on her face. "I assure you, sister, it is no trouble. Both yourself and the father have done this city a wonderful thing by killing the beast that has been killing our young ones. Stay as long as you like," the nun assured them, and the two of them thanked the woman, before they returned to filling their stomachs. They would be waking up early tomorrow so that they could get home by lunch, then they would rest for a day or two before going on their next mission to another place. They liked going on missions, so they were constantly being given missions so that they could gain more experience. Experience they would need in the situation that a war broke out again. If that happened, they would be sent to the front lines, though they were being sent to the front lines on missions anyway. The job is far from other. There are tons of beasts in this world that need to be slain. So long as devils exist, then the world will still have a need for people to fight against them. Naruto whispered to himself, with Zenovia nodding lightly next to him. They were trained for this sort of situation, and even after all was said and done they would still be loyal followers of God, but being exorcists was what they were trained for. Naruto transformed his sword into sunglasses, before putting them over his eyes with a smile on his face. Zenovia was smiling as well when she caught on to his hidden meaning. With the church's two strongest idiots around, the stray devils had something to be frightened of. "I want the record to show I don't look forward to this mission," Naruto said as he laid back in his seat on the plane that had just gotten on. He and Zenovia both were being sent to find a nun that had been kicked out of the church for attempting to steal and seal the Excalibur rapidly to a group of fallen angels that had been looking for rare swords, for whatever reason. The sword had been kept safe, but the nun had to flee from the scene, and her last known location was one of the most crime-filled cities in the world, where they were headed towards right at this moment by plane that would be crossing over an entire ocean. The sister Angela, a young woman who had grown sick of the life of a nun, had been hoping to make a life for herself by selling a powerful weapon to a high-paying bidder, before escaping to a lesser-known city and living out her days in luxury before she had been caught in the act and forced to flee while carrying a wild stock of light swords, artificial holy swords with far less power than a real holy sword. She had been spotted and reported to the Vatican by one of the local priests in the church at the target location, before the two of them were being sent after a large failure with the death of another team that had been sent. An entire team of 10 exorcists that were going on their first mission had been completely wiped out, and their heads sent back to the Vatican as a warning against sending anyone else after the ex-nun, who shamed herself in the face of the Lord in Naruto's opinion. Noted and ignored. Zenovia commented as she started to rest her arm against the window. They were taking a plane filled with people that knew who they were, so nobody was sending them off looks for their style of dress, or calling them bondage freaks. That insult got old very quick. Zenovia was not nervous about this mission. Well, she was, but not because of the city they were going to. They were going to Nuevo Laredo, Mexico, the 10th most dangerous city in the world with one of the highest crime rates in the world. She was worried over the fact that single nun had murdered 10 fully trained, if a bit new, exorcists. Granted, these guys weren't trained to the level of Naruto or herself, but they had swords and guns on them, yet they were slaughtered without mercy. Angela had not been known as a fighter. She had been a spy for the church that went into devil-controlled areas and saw if they were planning anything against the church without getting caught. She had almost no battle prowess, using the guards that were sent with her under the guise of priests to defend her while she gathered the info needed and got out. Now normally when you were sent severed heads as a warning to stay out of somebody's business, a person would listen and back off. Well, not in this case, because when in doubt, send two powerful people that lacked the common sense to realize that walking into an obvious trap was a bad thing. A very bad thing. The two of them were the best people to send, since they worked well together, and had plenty of experience getting themselves out of traps and other messes with their lives intact, and only a few injuries. They were also in no way green behind the ears beginners that just finished their training. They had a few years of missions under their belts to help them out. If anyone should be walking into traps, which nobody should, then it was two people that had walked into traps a dozen times before now and lived to tell about it. "Wanna annoy the people around us to pass the time?" Naruto asked with a small smile on his face, knowing that he had the perfect way to get under everyone's skin. Of course, it would all be in good fun and he would stop before it went too far, but he still needed to pass the time in some way before they truly started their mission. Zenovia sighed, before she looked at Naruto with a forced neutral, gaze that spoke volumes for her. Naruto looked away after a moment, before he started to whistle a song again. Naruto felt Zenovia start to tap her fingers on her seat in sync with his whistling. Naruto looked at her with a grin, before he decided just how he would get Zenovia involved. He knew her weaknesses after all. When there's trouble you know who to call. All Team Awesome. From their churches they can see it. All Team Awesome. Naruto started to sing their own parody to the old TV show song that they watched together when they were a few years younger, Teen Titans or something like that. When there are devils on the attack, you can rest and know we got your back. Because when the world needs exorcists killing strayaways, Team Awesome. Zenovia sang lowly, remembering the good old days when she and Naruto would relax and watch the small TV that the church had, before they would sing their little song. Naruto grinned, knowing that he got her to have a little fun. With their holy swords drawn they unite Team Awesome. Never met a devil that they like. Team Awesome, Naruto said before Zenovia smiled a bit wider and turned towards him, while some of the other people on the plane re-chuckling when they saw the father and sister actually acting around their age. Teenagers that were in fact a little goofy when they wanted to be. They've got the devils on the run, they never stop till the job is done. Cause when the world is fading in their faith, Team Awesome go. Naruto and Zenovia sang as a pair, before they sat back with a wide grin and a small smile, the grin on Naruto and the small smile on Zenovia. Sometimes they just had to act their age a little, instead of being super mature when they were surrounded by people. Naruto heard Zenovia start to whistle, and he grinned when she got into it. Naruto started to clap his hands together, and then out of nowhere they started to both clap their hands against each other's hands in a strange and complicated pattern, a secret handshake. The handshake ended with them pressing their thumbs together, before he stopped the noise and just laid back so that they could relax. "Can I interest you in some peanuts, father, sister?" the flight attendant asked, while Naruto and Zenovia looked at each other, before they sent the flight attendant the same look, clearly remembering the bad peanuts, and the flight attendant chuckled, before moving on to other guests to the plane. Naruto snorted, while Zenovia silently cursed herself for falling for his plow to get her to have some fun while on an official mission that she asked for even though they were having a day off today. Okay, she was able to see why Naruto was a little goofy, he was still in his day off mode. She hoped that he would be in mission mode by the end of the flight, because singing childish songs at people didn't bring victory. Okay, that was amusing, but I think we should get serious now. What do you think could have severed the heads? And don't say something sharp sarcastically, Zenovia asked, before commenting in a slightly demanding, but low whisper. Naruto took up a thinking position, before he tried to remember the state the heads were in. The heads were severed, but the cuts weren't clean. It wasn't a blade that beheaded them. Naruto ventured a guess, and Zenovia sighed. It was rather hard for them to guess anything when the literal only clue was her location, which doesn't help, and the fact that the heads weren't cut cleanly. They were both told that the only reason they knew the location hadn't changed recently was that a letter came for the church from the location, the same location as the return address for the box that had the heads inside of it. How that box passed the security checks for overseas packages they would never know. Just that somebody they had gotten it past the checks. So you have no clue, do you? Zenovia asked, just to make sure that she got all of her information out of him that she could. When he nodded she sighed and grabbed the bridge of her nose. The two of them didn't say anything for a while after that, both of them thinking about their own things while the plane started to move. Zenovia looked out of the window as the plane started to go up into the sky. Naruto leaned and closed his eyes with his head resting on Zenovia's shoulder, knowing that she would wake him up when they got there, or rather, if anything interesting happened. She reached into her bag, before she pulled out a book and started to read it to pass the time. They both looked irritated when a baby instantly started to cry when the plane started to go up, but they ignored it for a while. Naruto sat back up though, knowing that with a baby crying he wouldn't be able to sleep like he wanted to. When the flight attendant told everyone that they would be able to stand now, Naruto got up and went towards the parents that had the crying infant sitting between them in a special seat. They seemed surprised that he was there, but they still recognized him as one of the priests in the church they went to. "Father, is there anything we can do for you?" the father of the baby asked, and Naruto looked at the crying child for a moment. Naruto reached down and used a trick he had heard to get a child's ears to pop when on a plane, before he lightly pinched the nose of the child and pinched his mouth shut for a second. The parents seemed surprised, before when Naruto took his fingers from the baby, the infant seemed to be much calmer. All Naruto did was block the nose and mouth so that the ears would pop, and the baby would stop feeling uncomfy, so with a gentle wave he made his way back to his seat, getting thankful looks from the people he passed by. When he was back in his seat he crossed his arms and leaned against Zenovia again. "You know how to get crying children to pop their ears?" Zenovia questioned with a raised eyebrow, before she saw that Naruto was already in a dazed state. He could fall asleep rather quickly if he wanted to, and he obviously wanted to. It was going to be a long flight, so she couldn't blame him for spending his time resting up, something she might want to do as well. So putting her book away, she decided to rest up for the mission by leaning back against Naruto and slowly falling asleep as well. The flight passed by in the blink of an eye when the two of them were awoken by the flight attendant, and went through the security checks a second time as they got out of the terminal and left the airport with a sense of confidence that they would be succeeding this mission. Even without, the two of them started to look around when they realized that they had no idea where anything was in this entire city, meaning that they would have to ask for directions. Naruto and his partner walked out towards the street, before turning when they saw somebody that they could ask. The man was a middle-aged looking male with a slightly dirt-covered appearance, dark hair and light brown skin, with the appearance of a native of Mexico. "Sir, could you please tell us where we can find this person?" Naruto said as he pulled out a picture of Angela. The man looked at the picture. Before he looked at the two of them with narrowed eyes. Naruto's sweat dropped when he thought that this man might not be able to speak English. Naruto figured that not everyone could speak as many languages as he could. Naruto could speak Italian, Japanese, English, the language he used most, Chinese, Latin, Russian, and Greek. Sadly, Spanish was not one of the languages that he had knowledge of. "Sir, we are searching for the woman in this picture. Have you seen her?" Zenovia asked in Spanish, while Naruto sighed in relief. Zenovia learned to speak most of the same languages as him, though while she didn't know Japanese, she did know how to speak fluent Spanish. Naruto and Zenovia were world travelers because their missions would send them to many parts of the world, so they had been forced to study up on the more common languages, and the languages that would come up if they needed to find clues to something important. They were both primary English speakers, despite the fact that they were both Italian. Naruto looked Italian, was raised for most of his life in Italy, so despite his first language being Japanese, nobody would believe he was Japanese, so he just told people he was Italian. Much easier. Zenovia was actually born and raised in Italy. "Fuck off, bondage freaks. I haven't seen anyone like that," the man said crudely, while Zenovia twitched in annoyance, before she resisted the urge to punch this guy. "What did he say?" Naruto asked, and Zenovia grabbed his shoulder, before she started to lead him away from the rude man. There was no point in asking any more questions, even though she was suspicious of the man. Naruto and Zenovia could look around the town, and though the buildings seemed sort of clean, the town was, well, it was kind of like a ghost town. People that they could see seemed to be avoiding being seen, and the people that were in sight were not the kind of people that they would like to talk to. Nothing against them, but the way they were holding guns in plain view did not inspire confidence that they would be forthcoming with information. "I can see why she chose this town. The people here, they aren't the most friendly," Zenovia said, and while the town itself was good looking, she could remember that this place was listed in list of the most crime-filled places for a reason. They looked very out of place here, and had been the only people that had actually left the airport, with the other people boarding other planes, this stop only being a midway point for them. As they walked, they began to see more people, until it looked relatively normal when they entered an area with people selling items, calling out to them to come and buy their wares. Not everyone inside town should be judged as criminals though. I am sure that there are some good people out there. "See, this town even has police," Naruto said as he gestured to the police headed in their direction, before Naruto blinked when the cops stopped in front of them with serious looks on their faces. "I am going to have to ask the two of you to come with us. I am going to have to ask you to come with us," the man said first in Spanish, before he repeat what he said with extra mocking in his voice when he said it in English the second time. Before either of them knew it, they were sitting in the back of a cop car with their hands cuffed behind their backs riding along towards who knows where. Naruto could feel Zenovia's suspicious look towards the cops, finding it weird that out of everyone around them in the city, they had been arrested when they hadn't even done anything this time, and the evidence of all the other times they did stuff had been erased. "So this is happening." Naruto started with Zenovia, and she nodded. This was happening, but they didn't know why this was happening. They had their swords safely stored away out of view. Zenovia had both of hers inside of a sealed dimension so that she could call on them when she needed to, while Naruto had his Durandal in a sealed dimension, with Excalibur mimic taking the form of his sunglasses. As they rode in the back of the car, Naruto could see that they were heading toward a bridge that had something hanging from the side of it, 10 somethings actually. He nudged Zenovia in the side and gestured to the bridge, while she narrowed her eyes. When they actually got onto the bridge, the cops, a portly male with dark skin and bleached blonde hair, and a skinny man with similar skin but a bald head, stopped the car and parked it at the side of the bridge. They seemed to grin at each other, before they got out of the car and opened up the door, before pulling the two of them out of the car rather roughly. Naruto tried to break the cuffs, before he saw that they were made of some strong stuff, but he knew that his wrists would damage and his broke them from this position. "Walking around in clothes like those, you two kids are just asking to get it, aren't you? I hope the two of you are better than the other people that followed the boss here," the portly person said as he pulled out gun from its holster and pointed it at Naruto, while sending a lusty look towards Zenovia, who had her eyes widened when she saw the gun being pointed at her partner. She was about to summon Excalibur Destruction and break the cuffs, before she was kicked in the leg by Naruto lightly. Looking to the side, she saw him looking towards the cops, or possible fake cops, with a challenging look. Boss, I didn't know that cops could be ordered around so easily, Naruto said, fishing for information, while the skinny one came forward and sucker punched Naruto in the gut. Naruto doubled over, even though it didn't hurt, and coughed lightly. Hurt or not, that had bronze knuckles on his fist, and the fist had winded him a little, but he would suffer no real damage from it. The boss hired us to find anyone dressed like a priest, nun, or wearing weird clothes and kill them. Don't normally listen to a woman, but she paid good money with the promise of more money. A man's has to eat and fuck. She said that as long as we killed you weirdos that we could get paid to fuck any dumb bitches that got in our way. The skinny one explained before he was knocked from his feet when Naruto jolted up and slammed the top of his head into the man's nose, knocking him from his feet and to the ground with a bleeding nose. The fatter one started to open fire at Naruto, but the attack never landed when a sword blocked the bullet before it could hit Naruto. Zenovia had summoned forth her Excalibur destruction and freed herself just in time. Even though Naruto would have been fine, he was glad that Zenovia had bought him time to think. Jumping up and curling his legs to his chest, he brought his hands in front of his body, before he reached up and grabbed his sunglasses, before he turned them into a sword and cut himself free. The large man got out of his stunned state, while his partner picked himself off of the ground, and now that they were free both Naruto and Zenovia put their swords away, before they rushed the two men and punched them in the stomachs. The two men were knocked into the air, before they hit the ground and rolled before coming to a stop, showing that they had been knocked out cold by the punches. Naruto transformed Mimic into a smaller sword, before he completely seized the cuffs off of himself and Zenovia, before turning them back into sunglasses and putting them on. Compared to stray devils, these guys are nothing special. Guns or not, we have been trained to predict and block, or dodge bullets. What do you think we should do with them? Naruto asked Zenovia, who shrugged. They have some more cuffs, let's just cuff them before leaving this bridge. We don't have the time to waste on them. Zenovia suggested, not even being shaken by the fact somebody had threatened her with rape moments before. She had been in zero danger, even cuffed she could have kicked their asses with ease, the same with Naruto. These people were just little dogs with big barks but no teeth to back them up. This hadn't been the first time somebody had attempted to murder and or rape her or Naruto, and this would most likely not be the last time either. Most of the people they were after were violent monsters that would rather eat you than rape you, but on occasion they were sent after somebody that was clearly insane. Already ahead of you, Naruto said, showing he had swiped their cuffs, and he went over to cuff them, before cuffing them cuffs together so that they were forced to back. With that done, the two of them went on their way without losing any of their confidence, knowing that it was only a matter of time before they found their target. Naruto blinked and looked down at the river, before he noticed that there was a shack under the bridge. He pointed it out to his partner, and the two of them figured that it wouldn't hurt to check it out. With that in mind, they walked down towards the shack without falling into the water at the edge of the river. They had enough of water with their last mission to last them for a while. The shack was a small thing, only big enough to house a single person, with it being more the size of a tool shed than a real house. It was made of new wood, but the whole thing was poorly built, showing that the builder wasn't very talented at building anything, so they knocked on the door and waited for an answer. Naruto and Zenovia both jumped out of the way, landing in the river, when bullets started to burst through the wood towards where they had been. Today was not their lucky day, and that was proven even more true when they broke the surface of the water to see Angela looking down at them with guns pointed at their faces. It was obvious that she wasn't going to come with them quietly, that much was for sure, and they had been told to take her out should she prove to be a big problem. She had the defenses to the Excalibur fragments memorized. With that information alone she could, and most likely had, made a ton of money selling it to somebody that could actually use that information. Duck! Zenovia shouted as they two of them ducked under the water and started to swim down so that they weren't hit by the bullets that pierced through the water with ease. Naruto grabbed Zenovia and pulled her in close, before he grabbed his sunglasses and turned them into a light short sword and deflected the bullets, stopping Zenovia from bringing out her swords, which would weigh them down in the water. He kept his sword in the short state, and they waited until the bullets stopped before they started to have trouble breathing and needed to swim up and take a breath. Angela was trying to hurry and reload her gun, before she started to run away when Naruto and Zenovia got out of the water with very frustrated looks on their faces. She did not get very far before Naruto and Zenovia caught up to her and hit her in the back of the neck. She fell to the ground, while Naruto picked her up and tossed her over his shoulder. Now all they had to do was go to the church and have her memory wiped clean of all information involving the Excalibur fragments, then they would let her go. Beyond that, they didn't care what happened to her, or what she did with her life. The day may have sucked, but the mission had been completed. You have this under control, right? Zenovia asked Naruto, as they once more encountered trouble on a mission of theirs. This time they were just outside of the city, with the mission being stopping a group of fallen angels from entering the city. But the trouble this time were a bunch of ex-exorcists that were hell-bent on getting in their way. They were surrounded by a group of at least 20, or possibly even more that were hidden further away. They all wore white priest and black nun outfits depending on gender, with masks over their faces so that they can keep their real faces a secret in case they had to run away. A smart move on their part. Naruto and Zenovia had gone on their way to meet up and stop the west traveling group of fallen angels, while other exorcists were dispatched to take care of the other groups trying to enter the city. By take care of, the true meaning of those words was kill. They were to kill the fallen angels that were trying to break into the city and bypass the barriers before they could complete what they were trying to do. It had been confirmed now that one of the leaders of the Gregory group, an organization for fallen angels, was aiming to steal the Excalibur fragments for whatever purpose. But whatever it was couldn't be a good thing. That was why the strongest exorcists in the city at the moment, with the stronger ones being out of the city, were being moved around to take care of the problem. I have this under control, you go take care of the fallen angels. I will meet up with you when I am done here, Naruto said as he and Neovia separated by jumping out of the light sword that would have cut them, with Zenovia landing on top of a nearby building before she started to run away. Naruto turned Excalibur mimic into a spear with a cross at the end before finishing off with a foot-long blade extended from the cross. He used the side of the spear to block a light sword, before he spun around and smashed the blunt end into the side of the ex-priest's head. The man's eyes widened behind the mask, before they glazed over as he went limp and fell to the ground. He didn't have to look behind him to hear the footsteps getting closer, so he swerved to the left to avoid getting impaled through the back, before he spun his spear over his head and smacked him over the top of the head with the blunt end, knocking him down to the ground face first, before Naruto blocked a light sword with the blade of the spear while hitting a man behind him with the blunt end of the spear, smashing it right into his ribs hard enough to knock him back. Naruto pushed the light sword from his blade, before he spun around and smacked both men in the faces with the holy sword, in spear form, knocking them both out without him needing to try very hard. Naruto elbowed a man that charged him from behind in the sternum, before he spun his spear in his hands and blocked and diverted two sword strikes from in front of him from a man and a woman. Naruto stabbed the spear into the ground before he jumped and kicked off the wall to dodge a light bullet, before he kicked the two that tried to stab him in the face while in midair. He landed on his feet and grabbed his spear when more people started to rush him while the two he kicked fell to the ground, knocked out. He yanked his spear from the ground before stabbing a trash can that was nearby. Lifting it into the air, he spun around and threw the trash can towards one of the men rushing him, knocking him back into a brick wall, denting the trash can and knocking the back of the man's head into the brick wall, sending him to dreamland. He held his spear above his head lightly when a sword of light tried to brain him. He pushed off, before he bent forward and lifted his leg back up behind him, kicking an ex-nun in the chin, sending her soaring on top of an already knocked out man. He pushed off on the ground and stood up straight. Following that, he hooked his arm around a shorter nun's neck and flexed his arm to choke her out while he used his arm with the spear in hand to defend himself. Liquid ran down the nun's leg, before her eyes rolled up into her head and Naruto pushed her to the ground, before he punched a man in the cheek hard enough to smash him towards the concrete with bone-shattering force, just from his training making his punches extremely strong. He did have to lift up a sword that was bigger than he was. The fact he could do it one-handed testified to his physical strength. The abs that were visible through the unitard were not just for show. He used a palm thrust with one hand, while thrusting the blunt end of his spear back with the other, hitting a man in the chest with his palm and with his spear. The man behind him gasped, before he collapsed to his knees. The clothes on the man's chest in front of him were torn to shreds, before he collapses backwards with a shout of pain. A few of the men were trying to escape, with a nun leading them away. Naruto stabbed the blade into a truck parked at the side of the road and then he grit his teeth and spun his body before throwing the truck through the air so that it crashed in front of those trying to escape. Not seeing it coming, they ran into the truck and were knocked onto their butts in surprise. He was glad that it was in the dead of night, and a state of emergency had been declared so everyone in the city knew to stay inside, so nobody would get hit by his fighting but those he was trying to hit. He stabbed the trash can from earlier again and spun around, smacking a woman charging him and throwing the trash can at the people as they tried to stand up again. Where do they keep coming from? Naruto questioned silently, wondering what was up with the number of ex-exorcists that were popping up. Sure, on average about 30 or so exorcists a year went rogue, drunk on their own thoughts of gaining power to murder devils, but for so many to be collected at the same place was strange. Normally the church didn't do anything against these guys, because they had no elegance by definition, so they could kill devils without igniting a war, but for them to gather with fallen angels this was suspicious. Suck on this, one of the men shouted, with Naruto's eyes widening when he saw 2 grenades being thrown towards him. Knowing he had to act quickly, Naruto threw his spear and kicked the blunt end so that when it flew it started to spin around, smacking both grenades and knocking them high into the air where they exploded. Naruto turned around and punched a man in the gut, before headbutting him in the nose and grabbing him by the shirt and spinning him around so that he could slam both the man and another charging man into the wall, before he rolled across the ground to avoid 3 separate swords of light, and catching his spear before it touched the ground and standing back up to face the 3 men. Ropes wrapped around Excalibur mimic, before yanking it out of his grasp and tossing it across the street to the other side, before impaling in a wall. More of the ex-priests and nuns stood in the way of him and his weapon, thinking it was his only weapon he could use, not counting Durandal. But these people were not worthy of him pulling out Durandal if he had been able to fight them so far in their greater numbers without getting hit once. Naruto tensed his legs, channeling chakra into them as the ground cracked behind him from the chakra going into it by flowing from his foot. Then, in a flash, Naruto shot forward and clotheslined a nun and 2 priests as he reached the other end of the street next to his weapon. Their attempt to separate him from his weapon having failed horribly, Naruto smiled widely as he shot into action and went on the offensive with a rush and spin where he knocked out 2 nuns and a priest by elbowing their skulls and smashing his pole into them. Naruto looked at the last few of them almost shaking in their boots before he saw them charge him. The last of the ground he had been facing were all going to concentrate their forces on a last-ditch effort attack when everything seemed hopeless, hoping against their hopeless situation. Their hope was undeserved, because Naruto knocked them out seconds later with a straight right hook and kneeing the next one in the chin, before spinning in the air and smashing his heel into the face of the last one. He landed on the ground, and the 3 he had defeated all hit the ground at the same time. Looking around, Naruto saw that he had left the bodies of the unconscious littering the area, all of them groaning in pain or bleeding on the ground. So with a shrug, Naruto turned Excalibur Mimic into sunglasses again as he jumped up to the nearby cafe that had feet hanging out the broken window, and in the distance he could see flashes of light being thrown around. Naruto started to run along the rooftops, before he heard a shout. "Naruto-senpai! Naruto-senpai!" The joyful and upbeat shout of a young girl was heard running towards him, so jumping from the roof to the ground, Naruto saw one of the other Excalibur fragment sword users running towards him, speaking in Japanese and using the suffix that showed that she respected Naruto as her elder. The girl running towards him wore the unitard uniform that denoted her as a wielder of an Excalibur fragment, but unlike Zenovia, her uniform had no sleeves, instead short sleeves, and instead of ending along the panty line, her unitard ended similar to biker shorts. Her skin was lighter than Zenovia's skin, and her long hair was done up in 2 twin side tails on each side of her hair, held up with blue scrunchie. The color of her hair was light brown, almost orange looking, with her eyes being violet in color. The girl was almost as toned as Zenovia, and somehow she was also way above average in the breast department. This girl was Irena Shido, a girl that wielded Excalibur Nightmare, the Holy Sword of Dreams, after having her body modified with a light crystal so that she could use holy swords. She wasn't a natural holy sword user like Naruto and Zenovia, instead she was an artificial user, making her much weaker when it came to actually using her sword, but among the artificial users she was one of the strongest, making her fit enough to use an Excalibur fragment. The Excalibur fragment in her right hand was a silver dual-edged sword with a golden-edged black handle with no guard. This Excalibur fragment let her use the power of illusions and manipulate people's dreams. Funny enough, she was the exact same height as Naruto and Zenovia, being at 5 feet and 5 inches. It was funny how all of the church Excalibur wielders were the exact same height. Well, as it isn't the self-proclaiming raised in Japan, I thought you were dealing with the fallen angels coming from that way, Naruto said as he pointed towards south, and she seemed to fume for a second at the nickname, before she calmed herself down and took a deep breath. I was raised in Japan, and I finished with my end already. I was told to come to you if I wanted more orders, Naruto-senpai, Irena explained, and Naruto nodded to himself before he thought of what she should be doing right now. The flashes of light coming from where Zenovia was had ended, meaning either she won or lost, but since no fallen angels were coming into the city, he could guess she won and was back on her way, or searching for any fallen angels hiding out, waiting for their guards to drop. Go to the Catholic Church and guard Excalibur rapidly. Make sure that it isn't taken, but don't sacrifice your life to do so. We can always retrieve it if it is stolen later, but if you are killed we lose both Excalibur Nightmare and Excalibur rapidly, Naruto ordered seriously, knowing that the life of a talented holy sword wielder was something that couldn't be replaced so easily. While an Excalibur fragment was only a sword, it could be retrieved later and returned to its rightful place. But if she died they wouldn't know who took it, and they would lose another sword, making it even harder to retrieve the swords, not to mention he didn't want her to die. Gotcha, Naruto-senpai, and may the Lord smile on you tonight, amen. Irena shouted out with an extremely happy smile on her face, even a small blush. Her faith in the Lord was very high, very high. Naruto watched as she ran off in the direction of the church, guarding rapidly, before he turned to see if the signs of battle in the other directions were dying down. Naruto could still sense the Ascalon coming from Zenovia's direction. The sealed dimension worked in a way that it was possible to sense the wielder of the weapon. Not to mention if the wielder ever died, then the sealed dimension would be broken and the weapon returned to heaven. The fact he could sense Ascalon meant that Zenovia was alive, and moving towards the east to take out the remaining fallen angels there. The targets were obviously the Excalibur fragments. With how the information seemed to be centered around them, it was easy to see that they were wanted for some reason. Out of the 7 Excaliburs, 6 of them were within this very city, with Excalibur ruler being lost to them. 2 Excaliburs were held in each church. The Catholic, Protestant, and Orthodox churches all had 2 swords, though right now only Excalibur Rapidly, Excalibur Transparency, and Excalibur Blessing were without wielders. The Holy Sword of Heavenly Flare, Rapidly, the Holy Sword of Blessing, Blessing, and the Holy Sword of Transparency, Transparency, they also went by, each powerful in their own right. Rapidly was being held at the Catholic Church, which also used to hold Excalibur Destruction that belonged to Zenovia. Blessing was being held at the Orthodox Church, just like Excalibur Mimic. Finally, Excalibur Transparency was being held with the Protestant Church, just where Excalibur Nightmare used to be before Irena got possession of it. It was impossible to say where they would strike first, but it would be best to have rapidly protected, being more powerful than the other two not in use. It allowed the user to grow much faster than humanly possible for normal humans, that is, not like the super-trained humans like Naruto and Zenovia that were used to carrying super-heavy swords. Though they couldn't use their MX speed when carrying their larger swords, Excalibur Destruction for her, and Durandal for him. Transparency only allowed you to become invisible, and Blessing was the least likely to be targeted thanks to its nature, and how its power wasn't based for more direct battle, but instead support and giving power. What? He was an idiot with how he fought using raw power as his main go-to. It didn't mean he was completely stupid. He just preferred using pure strength to overpower his opponents instead of pussyfooting around waiting for the best chance to present itself for him. Naruto started to run towards the Protestant church, jumping from building to building to save himself time, because the quickest way to someplace was a straight line. The building were only a slight annoyance, but he could jump the rooftops so they weren't that annoying. Naruto dropped down in front of the church moments later, before he went into a full-speed run towards the front, going inside of the church without hesitation. And when he entered, he ran towards the large cross at the front of the church, right behind the podium where the priest would give sermons. Going behind the cross, he reached into his pocket and knelt down to the floor level and raised up a section of the carpet, revealing a keyhole. That was the perfect match for the key in his hand. Naruto twisted the key in the lock. Before the cross in front of him started to split apart, the more Naruto turned the key, showing that the cross was hollow, and inside of that cross was a glass case with a unique sword inside. The sword looked like a thin European sword, but the entire thing had a metal swirl design going up the handle and surrounding the blade, before stopping before hitting the tip. This was Excalibur Transparency, with the power to turn things invisible. He sighed in relief, before he began to turn the key in the other direction so that the cross would close up around the sword again, hiding it in plain sight. Even if it wasn't the sought secure location, nobody would think of it being hidden there. Naruto reached for the book at his belt, before he opened it to show that the handheld book had strange runes on it. Naruto placed his fingertips at the runes, before he began to chant under his breath the words he was reading. The runes moved up his arm, down his chest, down his leg onto the floor, before moving towards the cross in front of him and going up it to form a protection barrier to keep tainted being, devils and fallen angels, from touching the cross. He snapped the book closed, before he stood up and placed the book back on his belt. The book he used was filled with various sealing arrays and runes so that he could place barriers, erase memories, place trackers on objects. As long as he had the book, he could look up the current location of anything that he had marked, but he would have to manually go there, so it was sort of a bad way to track something when it could run away while you chased after it. Now that he was standing up, he started to run out of the church, before he slammed right into Zenovia and knocked them both to the ground. With the two on their butts, they groaned before sighing in relief at the sight of each other. Excalibur Transparency? Zenovia questioned with a genuine look of concern. Safe, and now under a protective barrier. It should be safe from fallen angels or devils now, and now it has a tracking charm on it. With my book we can track it no matter where it is taken. I was about to go check on Blessing. Irena is heading to, or at, Rapidly's location to protect. You mean helping her out while I check on Blessing? Naruto explained and questioned. Zenovia nodded, knowing the urgency of the situation, so she left to run towards the church holding Rapidly without saying another word against it. He himself ran off to go check on Excalibur Blessing and place the runes on it as well. He hated that nobody had given him permission to place them before now. Technically he didn't have permission, but it was an urgent situation. He rushed as fast as he could, knowing every second counted, and he was able to get there in 5 minutes easy, before he ran into the church to see a small group of fallen angel with dark gray wings, each only having 2 wings each, a single set, inside of the church. Naruto turned his sunglasses into an axe, before he threw it towards the nearest one, a young female fallen angel with green hair and yellow eyes. The girl didn't get to see what hit her before her head was split in 2, and her body turned into golden dust, before the golden dust vanished into nothing. Naruto jumped into the air and caught the axe before it could hit the ground, and then he turned his axe into a golden glove. Damn, I hope they didn't locate it, Naruto thought as he used the golden glove that was resting on top of his black gloves to catch a pink spear of light that had almost pierced him through the face. He tossed the light spear aside and started to run around to avoid getting impaled. Naruto jumped high into the air, his target being a young male fallen angel with a smirk on his face, and dark blonde hair with violet eyes. His face was punched so hard that it caved it, and his body started to turn into dust like the female before him. Naruto started to skid across the ground when he landed, before he turned his glove into a Japanese katana and cut a spear of light heading towards him into 2 pieces. He didn't give the fallen angels time to think or taunt him before he was on them, his sword already swinging as he cut through 3 skulls, separating the top and lower halves of their faces. They turned to gold dust and vanished before they could even touch the ground, or was it golden energy instead since it vanished? Either way, with only one fallen angel left, who looked like he had shit his pants, Naruto rushed him and stabbed him through the heart without mercy. This all happened in the span of 4 seconds, and in those 4 seconds Naruto had killed every fallen angels in the room. Naruto ran out of the main room, before he turned to the left, and entered the room where the bastisms were preformed. Inside of this room, right in the middle, was a large cross-shaped pool with light inside of the water so that it could be well lit even at night, all night long. Not all of the swords were located in the same place in each church. That would be just stupid of them. Naruto went inside of the pool, before he ducked under the water with his eyes open and his hand traced the area for his key to enter. Turning the lock over and over, the case holding the holy sword of blessing opened up so that the glass case with the sword inside of it was plainly visible, making Naruto let out a sigh of relief, bubbles rushing to the surface of the water as he did so. Naruto got his book out, which was waterproof, before he breached the surface to take a large and deep breath of air, before going back underwater and beginning his chanting so that the runes would copy onto the case holding the fragment of Excalibur, placing both a barrier and tracking rune on the sword and sword case. With that done, he inserted the key in the lock and started to twist it so that the case would begin to close, hiding Excalibur blessing from view. He got out of the water when he was done, once more thankful that his clothes were waterproof besides his pants and the cutout hole on his lower back that let some of the water in. Naruto smacked himself on the butt, and the water inside of his unitard mostly got out, but his pants that he wore over the bottom would have to dry the old-fashioned way, not that he could even notice it that much. The wet pants still weren't pressing against his skin. He placed his book back into its holder, before he saw Zenovia and Irena waiting for him outside of the pool with frustrated looks on their faces. Naruto-senpai, the case holding Excalibur rapidly has been broken into, and the sword missing by the time I got there. How is Excalibur blessing? Irena asked, with Zenovia nodding to the question. It is safe and sound. Did you see anyone run off with the sword, or was it completely gone when you got there? No clues left behind? Naruto asked carefully, wanting to make sure what happened. Only the higher-ups and other Excalibur fragment holders like himself and Zenovia had keys to unlock the cases and reveal the swords. Irena didn't have a key yet because she was new to being a sword user of a holy sword of this level. Before a few months ago, she had been a regular exorcist that used a normal mass-produced light sword and light gun, so she wasn't trusted with the key to unlocking all of the Excalibur fragments they had. Naruto and Zenovia had been using their fragments for years in their line of duty, having become fully fledged exorcists together when they were younger, and being given the swords right off the bat, proving themselves to the point they had been given the keys to the cases years ago. Nothing but statue with it inside of it was destroyed, and the case smashed long before I got there. The guards, they were dead, Irena said sadly, looking at the ground with disappointed eyes. If only she had gotten there sooner, then she could save their lives. Damn, this isn't good. Irena, go to the Vatican and have them prepare coffin for the brave men and women that died today. Report to them that it was stolen. Don't worry yourself over the sword too much. It can always be retrieved later. Now we have to increase the guard over the 2 remaining swords. No doubt they will come back for another attempt. I doubt anyone after the fragments would stop at one. Naruto groaned out, while Irena seemed to pick herself up at how he was attempting to comfort her by keeping her busy. She nodded and was about to run off, before she was stopped by the firm grip of Zenovia. Irena, before you go, this wasn't your fault. Naruto and I weren't there to stop it either, and we are more experienced than you. If anything, the blame rests on our shoulders. Zenovia comforted to help the girl, and because it was the truth. The situation was far from perfect, but they had gotten to the other 2 swords in time to keep them safe, with only 1 sword stolen, and the casualties were extremely low considering that they had been dealing with rogue exorcists and fallen angels. Only a few of the trained exorcists that had fought today were killed, with the guards to Excalibur rapidly being the exception, having been killed without mercy by some high-ranking fallen angel, since all that remained of them were blood-soaked weapons. They had been killed by a powerful weapon of light. Thank you, Zenovia-senpai. Irena thanked with a small smile, before she ran off, leaving Naruto and Zenovia to frown over what happened. I can expect the people I knocked out are being taken to questioning? Naruto asked, with his friend nodding. Naruto didn't knock them out just because he hated killing other humans, but because they could have valuable information on who the enemy that was after the swords was. If they had any information, then they could be offered some form of agreement for their lives. No doubt the enemy will come back. Obviously the forest outside of the city were just a distraction to get us out of the way long enough for the swords to be stolen. Next time they will send stronger people now that our guard is raised higher, and the higher-ups will place stronger security around the swords. Zenovia concluded with narrowed eyes, while Naruto leaned against the wall and sighed at the frustrating situation. Now they had no clue where Rapidly was, and they were going to have to face enemies stronger than the ones they got done beating down and slaughtering. Blessing and Transparency were safe though, and that was a good thing. Naruto only hoped that they weren't given a mission anytime soon so that they could be here to protect the swords. They needed to be here to defend these swords. Naruto, my son, do you know why I have called you here today? A very beautiful woman asked with a polite tone of voice. She wore the same clothes as any other nun, with her hood up and a hat uncovering her hair. She had fair skin and bright blue eyes that radiated kindness. Her hair length was hidden, and her bangs were being pulled up into her hat with only the sides escaping out. She looked to be in her late 20s to early 30s, she even had a calm serene feeling around her that one would expect from a nun. This was none other than Griselda Corda, one of the top 5 strongest female exorcists in the entire world, somebody that was not to be messed with. She was a member of the Catholic Church just like Zenovia and Naruto. Heck, this was the very woman that had trained the two of them in the arts of the sword. She had pretty much raised the two of them since they were kids, being their actual legal guardian. This woman could be described as the closest thing that Naruto had to a mother in his life, and might ever have. The two even shared somewhat similar looks that they had been thought of as mother and son by others before. She also scared the shit out of Naruto. This woman had turned him from a child that failed at even swinging a stick around with grace, into a teenager that was proficient in well over a dozen different types of weapons, with being a swords master as his top skill. She was the strongest exorcist that Naruto looked up to, and without a doubt the one that was the scariest when you made her mad, or she was on her period, or when asked her what her age was. The scariest being that one time she saw a stupid devil ask her what her age was while she was mad and on her period. Naruto had fear of God put into him that day when he saw her slay that devil in ways that even he had to pity the devil. Now, if only she would stop pulling on his whiskered cheeks so that he could ask her why she had called him here, then all would be good. Because right now she had a firm grip on his head with her hands. Her thumbs pushed his cheeks out, revealing sharp canines. Naruto really couldn't explain why his canines were a bit larger than average, but it wasn't unheard of. Sometimes people just had larger teeth than others. She let go of his cheeks when she saw that he was sweating nervously. Honestly, he was sure that today he would be punished for the theft of rapidly. Naruto was the father that was placed in charge of defending the area when the others weren't around. That incident happened 2 weeks ago, and Griselda had just come back from one of her own missions in dealing with an S-class stray devil, the tracking of which took most of the time that she was away. Is it about rapidly mother? Naruto asked, using mother as the term for a nun and not the term given to an actual mother. He may look up to her like a mom, and be scared of her like she was his mom, but he was not stupid enough to call him his mom. Yes and no, you are being sent on an important, possibly long-term, mission. Our spies have confirmed that the fallen angels of the Gremory are indeed in possession of the Excalibur rapidly. You are being sent to a location that has a high chance of running into the sword so that you can retrieve it, Griselda said as she pulled a stack of paper out of her sleeve and placed it on the table next to them. Naruto blinked in confusion before he picked up the papers, and his eyes widened when he saw what was on it. You can't be serious. Me and Zenovia have never been separate for more than a week or 2 at most, but this dash, Naruto said before he was flicked in the nose, stopping him from talking and ranting before he could go beyond the point of return. You are the only one that can do this. Zenovia can't speak Japanese very well, and Irena would give herself away too quickly. The two of them will be of more use here. If the fallen angels have the Excalibur, then they had a reason for wanting it. The spy we have confirmed that Azazel has taken an interest in this boy. It is possible he might be a natural holy sword wielder or sacred gear holder, Griselda said sternly, while Naruto looked at the mission details. His mission was to watch and study a boy named Issei Hayato under the guise of a new student to Koa Academy, and if he proved to be a threat to the church, take him out after extracting a possible sacred gear. Should he prove to be a natural holy sword user, then Naruto was to bring him back to the church after a period of 2 months. Isn't Koa Academy the territory of the Gremory though, one of the remaining families from the 72 pillar families, with the heir of the Citri family attending as well? The current Lucifer and Leviathan both came from the Gremory and Citri families respectively, Naruto asked. Memorizing the territories that belonged to the devils was something that was important to the exorcists, because when they went into devil territory for a mission, the truce demanded that they alert the devils to their presence. This is a very top secret mission, Naruto, as in not following normal protocol. If it got out that we lost of the Excalibur fragments, then the devils will think they had the advantage. You are going to pose under the guise of a normal foreign exchange student. We have already had false paperwork and transcripts made up for you. If either the Gremory girl or the Citri girl get in the way of your mission, wipe them out completely, and leave no trace that it was you that did it. Erase the memory of every person that came in contact with you and come back quickly, Griselda explained clearly, with Naruto gulping lightly. Taking out 2 high-class devils with peerages, while not unheard of, made him nervous since he wouldn't have his trusted partner with him for the experience. This wouldn't be the first time that Naruto had killed a high-class devil from one of the pillar families, and got away with it, but this time the stakes were much higher. He was being sent on a mission that, if failed, could spark a war between the 3 factions. What makes you think this Issei Hayato is the key to getting back rapidly though? Naruto asked, and Griselda wondered what to tell him for a moment. Well, if the boy caught the eyes of one of the leaders of the fallen angels, then it is possible they stole the holy sword because he is a natural wielder, and having one of those on their side would be a boon. The fact that they are interested in him shows he is special in some way, Griselda explained, and Naruto nodded lightly. He had never gone on such a high-risk mission before, and he felt nervous leaving Zenovia baying with Irena to watch her back. Normally they always had each other watching each other's asses, or were within running distance of each other. This would be his first major mission without her. Normally they only took missions outside of the city together. What about any stray devils if I run into them while there? You know me, if I get too close to a stray devil I have to kill it. I can't just see one and not kill it, Naruto questioned, and she leaned back against the wall and sighed for a moment. Wear your robe and keep your hood up, while using mimic in one of the forms you don't use very often. I know you well enough to know you would just charge into battle no matter what I say, you just want to hear me give you permission to do it. Griselda said kindly, with Naruto sighing in relief. He would rather not get in trouble for ridding the world of stray devils. And then Naruto blinked when he realized something. What if Issei is reincarnated as a devil under the Citri or Gremory? Naruto asked, needing to know this before he messed up. I leave that up to you. If you want to kill him, then you have my permission. The devils have been growing in power with their evil peace system in place, and the fallen angels are able to breed with humans and make heavenly angels fall from grace. Should another war break out, then we would have the worst odds. Anything you do, within reason, to even those odds will not be looked down on. Griselda answered, and Naruto took it as her saying as long as the only things he killed were fallen angels and devils, then all was good. He could understand that point as well, since devils and fallen angels both had more than one way of increasing their numbers, while the angels didn't have a way to increase their numbers for some reason. The stalemate was only a stalemate because the angels controlled light, a weakness to devils, and had other holy abilities that could wipe out a lot of devils with relative ease. They also had access to the exorcists and holy swords. How long will the mission last? Naruto asked nervously, not wanting to break the news to Zenovia that he would be going away for who knows how long. Hopefully 3 weeks at the soonest, realistically, a year or two before a move needs to be made. You will be regularly sent updates on the state of the remaining Excaliburs, and should you retrieve Excalibur rapidly, then the mission will be over, a success. Griselda said with a smile at the very thought of a successful mission of this magnitude. She also hoped that Naruto wouldn't have to get his hands dirty with the blood of those high-class devils, but she knew that it was possible that they could attack Naruto first, and if that happened he would have to defend himself from them. Lethal force would be the preferred method in her opinion. Naruto nodded and he looked over the profile that had been made for him, knowing that he would have to have it memorized anyway so that he could keep his story straight. Naruto Korda 17 years old, male, birthday, October 10th, nation of origin, Europe, Italy, parents, Griselda Korda, unknown, father, city of birth, Rome, Italy. It says here I am your son, why? Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow, and Griselda nodded. I can answer more questions about you, and it would look strange if you had no parents or last name. Single mothers aren't very uncommon, sadly, so it would just make the entire thing more believable. I know you, and it isn't impossible that you could be mistaken for my son. If they do a background check on you, and call the church, then I can come up with a story to answer any questions. Griselda explained her reasoning. She was ranked as one of the 5 strongest female exorcists, but her name wasn't known by very many devils since she mostly targets stray devils, vampires, zombies, and other kinds of creatures that made themselves known as a threat. Oh, that makes sense, Naruto said after a moment, but he felt something at how she said that. Naruto continued to look over the information, before he saw that it said he was a straight C student, and he was a little bit ticked about that. If you are able to get your hands on rapidly, then immediately call for help and hide as soon as possible. Honor means nothing, so don't be afraid to run from a fight. You have to get that blade back at all costs. Griselda warned, with Naruto nodding with a chill going down his spine at the way she said that, as if he wasn't already nervous enough as it is. But now she was saying stuff to make him even more nervous than he was before. When do I start? Naruto asked with a grimace, hoping that it wasn't any time soon. In a week, giving you enough time to get used to the city, and scout out any good locations. You will be staying at the church there, though I heard it is a bit run down, so part of that week will be used to fix it up. Griselda told him, to which he nodded. Standing up, he grabbed the papers and started to walk away now that he got what he needed to know from her. She coughed into her hand, getting his attention, before she decided to add something. Of course, if you can get her agree to not leave the church without you, then Zenovia may go with you. You will be attending the school, but since she isn't very fluent in Japanese, she won't be going to school. Since I am in the city, I can help protect the Excalibur swords remaining, but she will have to return if I have to leave, Griselda said with a smile, brightening up Naruto's face now that he learned he won't have to go to a new place without anybody to watch his back. With that in mind, Naruto ran out with a slight smile on his face. The second he ran out of the door, though, he slammed right into both Irena and Zenovia. The 3 of them yelped as they rolled across the ground, before Naruto groaned when Zenovia landed on top of him, sitting on his chest, while Irena landed with her back pressed against his knees, and her foot in his face. Zenovia's arms waved around, before she slipped and fell back, kicking Irena in the face hard enough to make her roll off of Naruto, before she slammed the back of her head against the ground, with her ass pressing against Naruto's cheek, squishing against his face before she rolled off of him. The 3 of them were all holding some part of their heads in pain, before they started to stand up. How the 3 of them moaned in unison, before they blinked and looked at each other. Irena seemed confused about what just happened, while Zenovia looked at the paper sticking out of the front of Naruto's pants with a raised eyebrow. Irena, could you come in now, and close the door behind you? Griselda called out, so the twin-tailed girl eeped and ran into the room, closing the door behind her. Naruto and Zenovia shared looks, before they both shook their heads in amusement at the girl's behavior. So, do we have a new mission or are we staying here to guard the remaining fragments? Zenovia asked seriously, with Naruto grabbing her by the hand as he looked at the door, before he rushed the two of them over to the confessional where they would have a bit more privacy in case somebody randomly walked in the room. He closed the door behind them, before he realized how cramped it was inside of the small box, but shrugged it off. That mission to Egypt had ended up with them being far more cramped together than this box. Okay, this is going to be a very important long-term mission. I have to watch this guy. Naruto started, showing her the picture of an average-looking brown-haired boy with hazel eyes, and we might get closer to finding the stolen fragment. Azazel has shown interest in him, but we don't know why. It could be because he was a natural holy sword user, or a sacred gear holder. The location is in the Gremory territory that the Gremory and Citri heirs go to, but we can't let them know who we are or that you even exist in the first place, Naruto explained quietly, with Zenovia nodding lightly, not really understanding what was so important about an average-looking boy that it would catch the attention of the leader of the fallen angels. I see, and the boy himself? Zenovia asked, and at this part Naruto grimaced a little. If he is a natural wielder, recruitment. If he is a sacred gear holder, recruitment. If he is a threat though or is turned into a devil, death, or sacred gear extraction and death. If he is turned devil, then it is up to me what to do with him though. Naruto answered, and Zenovia could understand the grimace now that she had that explanation. Extracting a sacred gear was a hard and long process, which resulted in the death of the one possessing the sacred gear. Normally the only times they believed it was okay to take away a sacred gear was against people that had proven to be traitors, or those with extremely dangerous sacred gears. I see, and I take it that we aren't to make contact with the boy? Zenovia asked, while Naruto sighed in relief. She wasn't questioning things, which made it easier for him. I would rather watch from a distance. He is pretty much fallen angel's bait right now. We will intervene if his life is in danger, stop a problem before it becomes a problem, and try and steer him away from the devils. Naruto said with a shrug. He didn't know this guy personally, and he had nothing against him, but orders were orders. If the higher-ups believed he could be a threat in the future, then Naruto was more likely to believe them than not to. He had never been steered wrong by the church before, well, at least not to his knowledge. The two of them got out of the booth when they realized they were done talking about this, before the two of them made their way out of the church to go prepare. Naruto would explain to her the exact details of what they were supposed to do, then they were supposed to do it. They were going to have to pack, then they realized they had almost nothing to pack. They had almost no worldly possessions besides what they always carried on them. Naruto preoccupied himself with looking over the information gathered on the Gremory girl and her peerage, the known members at least. Rias Gremory, age 17, red hair and green eyes, pure-blood devil heir to the Gremory, possesses Baal family's power of destruction related to current Lucifer medium-level threat. Akino Himejima, age 17, black hair and violet eyes, reincarnated devil/fallen angel, daughter to Barakiel, possible use of light magic or lightning magic. Medium-level threat. Yuto Kiba, age 16, blonde hair and blue eyes, failure of the Holy Sword Project, no special relationships, sword birth as sacred gear, reincarnated devil, more than likely sword-based skills, low-level threat. Kaneko Tuju, age 15, white hair and yellow eyes, reincarnated devil, family relations, unknown skills, unknown, possible super strength, low-level threat. I am so underwhelmed right now, none of them seem very strong from these pictures. Naruto thought in disappointment when he looked at the pictures of the first two girls, Rias and Akino, both being very large breasts, girls with chests even bigger than Akino's, while the third guy was somebody that Naruto already knew of. He had been a boy that had been a part of the project to create and modify people so that they could use holy swords like himself and Zenovia could naturally, but the project had been inhuman, treating the subjects like garbage and throwing their lives away without a care. The project had been cancelled, but not without claiming many young lives. The final girl though, this Kaneko, was rather petite and cute, not what he would expect from somebody with possible super strength. Of course, she was ranked as a low threat, so he could take care of her should the need arise easily. These were devils, and they exorcists with extremely powerful holy swords and years of fighting against stray devils under their belts. They had fought super strong, super fast, and even super smart opponents before and defeated them. None of these people ranked very high on the threat list, and the spies were rarely wrong about how they ranked people. Of course, the SE ranking were adjusted to the skill level of the exorcist that would be dealing with them. When the spy was writing this report, he had been informed that Naruto was going to be the one comparing them to, so the levels were adjusted to fit him. To him these devils were medium and low threat levels, but to others they may be very high on the threat level. A red-haired princess, a cold-looking white-haired girl, a black-haired mixed-breed girl, and a yellow-haired survivor. I can't say I like them, but I hope they don't get in the way. They seem to be more trouble than they are worth, Zenovia said after looking at the pictures from over his shoulder, while Naruto rolled his eyes and started to look through the files again. He could see that it recorded that the Gremory girl was a distance fighter, so close range would be her weakness, and the power of destruction was not a perfect move. It could be blocked or cut by a stronger energy, or by a holy object. All you needed was to hit it with an attack of equal or greater power, and this girl's biggest weapon was gone. The boy would be a bit harder, being a close-range fighter with possible sword mastery, he would be a more fitting match. This Akino girl, she would be hard to figure out, but she seemed to favor long distance over close, but wasn't completely weak in hand-to-hand. Finally, the most mistress of the group showed no real specialties besides being super strong. Even if she had a rook's defense, a holy sword would pierce through her tough skin. The two of them together could easily wipe these devils out without too much trouble. Call it arrogance, but Naruto was sure that either of them could take out this Rias girl and her peerage alone if needed. They both had 2 holy swords, one of which were one of the 4 greater ones each, and an Excalibur fragment. Naruto carried holy water with him, and they both wore silver crosses. They also had training to be better than human, able to fight on par with devils. They had reflexes that could combat super speed, and were durable enough to take a fair beating from the super strength of a rook. They might not be naturally as strong as the rook, or as fast as the knight, but they had great reflexes as well. Naruto could use his chakra to give himself heightened speed, senses, strength, and use his chakra as a weapon in hand-to-hand combat. Seriously, you don't learn to hold a giant blade with one hand without being far stronger and faster than a normal human. He had seen Zenovia jump a full-grown man out with a single hit to the gut, and he had done it himself. Anyway, they wouldn't actually go seeking a fight if they could help it. They would only fight these people if they got in the way of their mission, or attack them first, then all bets were off. So long as they were attacked first, then anything was fair game. He both wanted to fight them, and didn't want to fight them at the same time. If they got in his way, all he really had to do was beat them down till they were out of his way, that way nobody could start a war over their deaths. Still, it would be best to hope that they stayed out of the way completely. Oh well, what happens will happen, no use worrying about it just yet. The most important thing was Excalibur rapidly, not picking fights. This was going to be a long mission. Damn, these clothes are so weird, Naruto said as he looked at the school uniform that he was being forced into wearing for the sake of the mission. After years of wearing a skin-tight unitard everywhere he went, and as his main form of clothes for those years, he forgot what it was like to wear normal people clothes. In Rome, people had just gotten used to Father Naruto wearing skin-tight black clothes that showed off his upper body without showing much actual skin, and black skinny jeans with a loose belt around his waist. Now normally he would wear his priesthood over his clothes during the winter months, even though his unitard kept him surprisingly warm, but he felt so stuffy in these clothes. He was wearing a white button-up shirt with a black tie around his neck, and over that white shirt was a dark-colored button-up jacket with the buttons done up. The jacket was a bit stiff because it was new, and the shirt rubbed against his skin in an uncomfy way. The pants of the uniform were matching the jacket in color and material, while the shoes, well, Naruto was wearing rather plain-looking brown shoes that slipped on and off, and short socks under them. The only real unique part of the uniform that Naruto had were that he kept his gloves on under them, looking just like normal fingerless gloves with the jacket and shirt covering that they went up to the middle of his forearm. The final piece of clothing he wore was his hidden Excalibur mimic, which was taking the form of belt that he loosely wore around his waist, not even going through the belt loops just in case he needed to call on it on a moment's notice. Why didn't you just wear your exorcist clothing under it? Zenovia asked while she used a broom to dust the church that she was in charge of cleaning while Naruto was at school spying on the target. Naruto had told her that she was only supposed to leave the church when Naruto was with her because of her lack of Japanese know-how, while he was more in the know when it came to Japan, since the customs there were amazingly similar to what he dealt with as a kid in Konoha. Now she would repair the church so that they could live in a place that wasn't a dump. Really, the only thing she had to do was fix the stone cross at the front and clean the place up some, maybe fix the lightning above them a little for light in the middle of the night. I am going to go change, Naruto said as he went over to the bathroom and grabbed his normal, if a bit weird, clothing. Naruto kicked the shoes and socks off first before he grabbed the boots that were high enough to reach mid-thigh on him. Look strange they did, but they were designed to help him in all types of areas. Hot, cold, dry, humid, and even harsh weather areas weren't much to an exorcist that was wearing this clothes, so Naruto slipped them up and sighed in relief at the soft and tight material. He tightened the strap at his thighs before he stood up and dropped the pants that he was wearing. No underwear. Since that wasn't part of the uniform, he didn't bother buying them. Getting out his unitard, he reached for the silver circle in the front and clicked it, undoing the straps around the upper chest so that he could open up part of the back and step inside of it, before he pulled it up and stretched out the opening to get her upper body through, and his arms through the sleeves, before the opening closes behind him and became skin tight again when Naruto clicked the silver circle in the middle of his check. He was already wearing the gloves, so situating himself down there he pulled his pants up, before he got redressed in the school uniform. When he was done, he placed his silver cross under his shirt and sighed at how much better this entire thing felt now. Now the clothes weren't touching his skin directly, so he didn't notice them as much as he slapped Excalibur mimic, in belt form, around his waist. Naruto picked up a small bottle of holy water, before he placed it in his book bag for the school, just in case he was attacked by the devils there, and he wanted to keep his identity secret, which he did. Now, Naruto looked the same as before on the outside, with only his normal boots being the exception to the change. You don't go years wearing the same type of outfit, and just give it up completely. So with confidence returned to him, he walked out of the bathroom and saw that Zenovia was still sweeping up the floor. He would have to make sure to find a vacuum to help out with her. Have a good day spying on the target, Zenovia said neutrally as Naruto felt the church with a sigh. He could tell that she would rather be out there fighting the enemy than being on the sidelines as backup in case something went down. She had thought she would have had more to do than just clean up the church, not that she didn't realize how important it was to keep the house of God clean, but she wasn't trained for household chores. She had been trained as a fighter, not a housekeeper. Naruto, on the other hand, was also trained in household chores like cleaning. He ran down the road towards where the school was going to be. The streets of Coast City were filled with certain numbers of teenagers running towards the school as well. Naruto adjusted his run lower in speed so that he could appear more normal, running too fast, and he would attract attention to himself. Naruto couldn't help but chuckle when he saw that some of them were running with their breakfast in their mouths, which amused him greatly since they didn't have the time to eat when they woke up. Naruto followed behind one of the small groups of girls that were running, since they wore the female version of the school uniforms. He could find where he needed to go as long as he followed them around. He wasn't the best with a sense of direction. Naruto blinked when he saw somebody running off in the distance. Brown hair, hazel eyes, average looks, and a strange aura about him. Naruto could see one Issei Hayato rushing off towards school with a near-panicked look to his face. Naruto sped up, before he allowed himself to crash right into Issei, knocking the two of them down to the ground with Issei yelping in both surprise and pain. Naruto was not sure if this plan was a smart one, but acting the part of somebody that was sorry about what he did, Naruto stood up and extended his hand to Issei. "So sorry about that, I didn't see you there. I am not from around here, and I was distracted by the scenery." Naruto Korda, by the way, Naruto said with a friendly tone, the only real genuine part of this act. Issei could possibly be a future comrade if he could be recruited, but Naruto wouldn't put his hopes in that. It was just easier to watch somebody when you were close by them, just like he planned on worming his way into the occult research club without them knowing of his loyalty to the church. After all, keep your friends close, and your enemies closer. If Naruto could get into that club, then he could learn the weaknesses and strengths of his enemies in the case that they did get in the way. He also put himself in a position to strike should he have to. "It's not a thing, Issei Hayato, damn it, not another pretty boy," Issei shouted as he jumped up and pointed at Naruto with accusation in his tone, honestly confusing the hell out of Naruto. Naruto blinked, before he pointed to himself with a tilted head. Issei gained a sheepish smile on his face, before rubbing the back of his head. "Sorry about that, you look a little like this guy from my school that has all of the boobatastic babes after him," Issei said sheepishly, while Naruto raised an eyebrow at the word boobatastic but figured it had something to do with breasts. Naruto noticed that Issei seemed to be a little taller than him once they were fully standing, though just an inch or two, not a big deal. "Boobatastic?" Naruto questioned lightly, a dumb expression for sure on his face. "Of course, some people say that only big gazangas can be boobatastic, but I don't care. Boobs are boobs, and all nice boobs, big or small, are boobatastic to me. I love all shapes and sizes of breasts. How about you?" Issei shouted as he pointed at Naruto with an eager expression, hoping to add another breast-loving ally to his somewhat small group of friends, people that would talk to him without calling him a pervert and hating on him. Does this have any point to it?" Naruto asked, though to be fair, even he would admit that he lived a rather simple and sheltered life from the influences of the world outside of the church. He had seen the breasts of the girls that he had gone of missions with before, and he still bathed with Zenovia on occasion, but he had never really put much thought into breasts before now. "I guess I don't really care about size," Naruto said honestly, and Issei wrapped an arm over Naruto's shoulder with a grin. Cool, you totally get it. All boobs are filled with the hopes and dreams of the human race, big or small, you just got to love them all. I think you and I are going to get along just fine, my fellow lover of the female form," Issei said, extending his other hand so that Naruto could shake it. Naruto grabbed the hand before they two of them separate and started to jog towards the school again. "So Issei, you really love breasts, don't you?" Naruto asked, hoping that he could dig for something a bit more useful than this boy's breast fetish, some kind of redeeming quality that would hint at the boy's potential as a future exorcist. "They are more important than my life." Issei nodded with such conviction that Naruto was almost moved, but then he remembered that these were breasts the boy was talking about and nothing else. Naruto sighed, already knowing this boy would follow his dreams, which involved breasts. It was easy to see that this boy, as kind-hearted as he seemed to be, was a soul filled to the brim with lust. It would be hard to convince this type of boy to become an exorcist, people who could normally only enter relationships with other exorcists these days with how mobile their lives were. The invention of the evil peace system that turned creatures into devils was the reason so many devils turned stray. If Naruto could go back in time, he would kill the person that made the evil peace system, thus limiting and making the devil faction much weaker, while also possibly increasing the strength of the angels by recruiting more humans with sacred gears to fight against devils. But no, the devils were getting all of the good prospects for no good reason, just because they were too lazy to wait a few hundreds years for their race to naturally replenish itself. They had to be impatient and want to increase their numbers faster, increasing their military forces at all times. Even though the current Satan spoke of peace, It was hard to believe them when they were taking all of the strongest people for themselves. Well, it was nice to meet you, Issei. Maybe I will see you later, Naruto said with a smile as he ran ahead of Issei so that he could get to class on time and make at least somewhat of a good impression. He knew that his grades weren't going to be good, so he might as well make himself look friendly and polite. He had to memorize the layout of the school multiple times over this week he was in the city with Zenovia, scooping out the area and getting used to the place. He knew this place pretty well, or at least the basics of it. His sense of direction did suck, so sometimes he could get turned around without meaning to. Naruto hoped that he didn't get lost again like that time he and Zenovia had been riding his bike, and the two of them had ended up going 300 miles in the wrong direction, before they had to change direction. Either way, Naruto was stopped once more when he felt a hand grab the back of his jacket. He was stopped in his tracks by the surprising amount of strength in the grip, before he saw the other students going towards the school while he was held back by a girl. Naruto looked behind him at the person holding him back and saw that it was the girl that he had noticed in the files, Kaneko Tuja, and she was displaying that strength that she was rumored to have by holding him back from going any further. She was looking at his face, his eyes, his body, while looking for something that she didn't seem to be finding. She stared for an extra long amount of time at the whisker marks on his cheeks, and then her gaze settled on his stomach for a long period of time before going back up to his whisker marks. Naruto had no clue what was going on, or why this girl had stopped him in the first place when he wasn't even acting oh shit. Naruto hadn't been suppressing his chakra this entire time he had been rushing to school. He had been slowing himself down, but his chakra had always been like a huge light to devils and other creatures that he fought. They could sense his location, so he had learned to suppress it, but suppressing it wasn't a natural thing for him to do when he gave off so much naturally. He was like a bright flame attracting moths. Only Naruto attracted the supernatural being with good sensing skills to him. "Can I help you?" Naruto asked, making himself seem friendly, even though this girl was a devil. He couldn't be openly hostile with her, and it wasn't like she had attacked him yet. She was just bluntly obversing him to try and find something off about him. She didn't seem to care that he was looking at her strangely, and she certainly didn't let him walk away when she reached out and grabbed his sleeve to stop him from walking again. Naruto had to take a breath at how this girl was being very blatant about making herself a trouble to him, and if she had been a normal girl then Naruto would have been more than willing to wait for her to finish, but this was a devil girl, somebody that was his natural enemy. It was in his best interest, and the mission's best interest, if he found a way to make her stop trying to analyze him so much with those golden yellow eyes. The bell going off told him that he was late for class, and to that he sighed in annoyance. "What are you?" Kaneko asked, not even giving Naruto her name before she asked him a very rude question. "I'm Naruto Korda, nice to meet you," Naruto greeted, ignoring the real meaning behind her words when she questioned him. He was sure that she was sure that he was some kind of creature that wasn't human. The girl didn't seem annoyed, or more annoyed since she had a slightly annoyed look on her face anyway, but her nose was twitching every once in a while for some reason. She did have her own thoughts going through her head the entire time that she was observing him. This guy has a super powerful chakra. Does he even know about this? I was able to feel it from miles away for a week now, but he smells human. Humans aren't supposed to have chakra like this. Kaneko thought with narrowed eyes for a moment, before the almost heavenly scent she could smell from him filled her nose again. She had never smelt a human in all of her life that seemed to be so delicious smelling. He smelled better than even the sweets and chocolates that Rias bought for her, or that Akino made for her. Deep inside of her, she understood that something was off about this guy based on the conflicting instincts she had on this guy. His chakra was so large and strong that she could feel it just by being in the same city as her. This entire week she could feel that same aura of powerful chakra confusing her. She had made sure to track it when it started to move towards the school, having the full plans to intercept him and find out the reason that a Yukai was in Rias territory. But then when he got here she learned that his body was completely human based on his scent. That delicious smelling scent that seemed to remind her of the ocean, the trees, and just nature all around, but there was also something small about him that set off her runaway instinct. She was conflicted because this had such a addicting and warm chakra, like basking in the sun while drinking a slushie, so she wanted to stay closer to him to bask in that feeling, yet she wanted to also get far away from him because he gave off a strong vibe that told her he was dangerous. Humans normally didn't give devils these runaway vibes unless they were truly dangerous, but this guy's chakra was something that couldn't be faked either. You don't just have super warm and loving chakra if you were a bad person that was dangerous. You mind letting me go so I can go to class? I would rather not be late on my first day even though I am already late, Naruto demanded very lightly, but his sweat dropped when he was completely ignored in favor of the girl getting closer to him. He backed away, and she took a step forward towards him with that very same suspicious look to her eyes. Naruto took another step away from her, while she took another step towards him and got closer than before. Naruto started to walk away faster, with her holding onto his sleeve and following him around with a very close eye. Yeah, Naruto wanted to get close to these guys to find out what their weaknesses were, but this was a bit too close for his comfort. This was not a great start to the mission. Naruto was curious. Frankly, he hadn't expected for Rias to try and make the first move on him after only a week of him observing Issei from the sides, waiting for any hints that the boy would be approached by the fallen angel scum that had stolen what belonged rightfully to the church. Blades forged by God belonged with those that actually cared enough to pray to the man when they had the chance, of course. Naruto's observing Issei had been blocked almost every day by one Kaneko Tuju, who would wait for him at the front of the school every single freaking day and then hold onto his shirt for the rest of the school day before she had to leave so that she could do her whatever duties as a devil. Honestly, Naruto didn't give two shits about how devils spent their time. But if they were stray, then that was all the go-ahead that Naruto needed to make the first move against them. Seriously, he had been taught from a young age that all devils were his natural enemies. But he was only supposed to hunt the ones that started to actively go after humans as prey. Those like the Gremory were, suffice to say, some of the kinder devils that believed that humans and devils could coexist. Funny that they said humans and not the church, yet they expected people from the church to treat them with respect when they got almost none in return. The only reason people even seemed to care if a devil got slain was if that devil happened to be a girl with a rather slutty body, was the most insulting way he could put it. Or attractive body if he wanted to attempt to be nice about it. He didn't want to be nice about it. Do you know why I called you here, Korda-san? One Rias Gremory, a girl that matched the red-haired and green-eyed picture he had gotten. She had to be at least 5 feet 8 inches tall with the appearance of a European woman based on how she was too tall to be the normal height for a Japanese person, which normally ranged around 5 feet 4 inches to 5 feet 7 inches for this age group. She was also very well endowed for her age, thus giving credit to Naruto's slutty body comment. She certainly fit the image of a girl that had everything in her life handed to her without having to work for it. Her strength didn't feel like the strength that one got through blood, sweat, tears, and good old-fashioned determination to work through the pain. No, and frankly, I wouldn't have come if I didn't think that you wouldn't let this go if I did, Naruto said with narrowed eyes, getting a surprised look from the girl in front of him, as well as surprised looks from everyone that was used to men falling to Rias' good looks at first glance. A person that didn't want to meet her was more rare than a person that did want to talk to her. Naruto rolled his eyes at how his simple sentence had already thrown her for a loop. Those that slayed devils were taught about how not to let the enemy's body distract you in battle, so Naruto could apply that to a mental battle and make her appear no more beautiful than the average girl, though of course as a pure-blooded devil he could never see her as anything but what she really was. A devil, plain and simple. Hey now, we are all friends here. No need for such hostilities. The pretty boy of the group, Yidokiba, commented with a light and awkward smile. He looked like he was from the same general area, in appearance, as Naruto. He was the same height as Rias was, and he had a mole under his eye on his face that added to that pretty boy charm of his. Of course, Naruto almost disliked the boy without him being a devil. This boy used to be a Christian, and that was a confirmed fact since he had been a part of the Holy Sword Project, and while the methods were horrible, only Christian children had been used. This boy abandoned his faith when he became a devil, something that was worse than being born a devil. Those born into that life, while enemies, didn't really chose to be devils. I wouldn't say friends. I don't really know any of you, Naruto commented somewhat truthfully. All he knew was the information that the spies had gotten for him, which was a lot of information. Yuto seemed to get the message that Naruto didn't want to be here, while Naruto looked away from Kaneko, who reminded him so much of Fluffy, an old pet cat he had at the church for a few years before it ran away that it wasn't even funny. Those golden yellow eyes were just like his old cat's eyes that he hadn't been able to bring himself to hate her, but he was still wary of the devil inside of her. That is fair enough, you are from a different country in a new place, so of course you would be a little wary around strangers. I hope that the rest of our chat can at least be pleasant. Rias tried to reason with Naruto, who huffed and leaned forward and looked at Rias with narrowed eyes. Rias looked towards Naruto with a smile on her face, before he pulled out a chess piece from her skirt pocket and placed it on the table between them. Naruto narrowed his eyes when he saw the bishop piece being laid out on the table. Naruto crossed his arms and laid back without looking away from the object. He knew what that was. It was an evil piece from the evil piece system that devils of high class used to create slaves out of other species and turn them into devils like them. It was the reason why the devils had the advantage. They were taking the powerful humans and turning them into devils. Anytime a human showed promise, poof, turn them into a devil. If a monster showed promise, then the same thing was said. Naruto didn't have as much an issue with monsters per se. So long as they didn't attack people, then he would leave them in peace. But the act of turning a monster into a devil automatically put them on a kill list. Like chess, the pieces that were used were a single king, a single queen, 2 rooks, 2 bishops, 2 knights, and 8 pawns. The one that owned the evil pieces were the king, and the rest were their servants. Kaneko-chan told me that you have huge reserves of energy inside of you, and I was wondering what you could tell me about it. I will be frank, I could feel you the second that you entered the city, even before you entered the city, yet you are a human. Rias stated as a matter of fact to him, like she was revealing some kind of big secret at the fact he might have forgotten to hide his own energy from the people in the city. You make it sound like you aren't human, Rias Gremory. Your last name may be Gremory, but even having the same last name as fake demon shouldn't make you arrogant enough to think of yourself as anything but human, Naruto said, hiding a smirk at how he directly and indirectly insulted Rias by using her name against her. The red-haired girl seemed to twitch and take a deep breath, before the black-haired girl Akino Himejima, A shorter girl than Rias with a bigger bust and more seductive, or slutty in his opinion, figure came and gave her a cup of tea to calm her nerves. Naruto used this girl's action of handing Rias the tea as the distraction he needed to make his move, swiftly moving his hand as he leaned forward. Naruto reached on the chessboard on the same table and switched the bishop piece with a normal bishop piece. Before he tossed the bishop into his breast pocket without attracting any attention to himself, his movements silent and swift enough that it was like he never moved in the first place. Naruto was going to have this evil piece sent to the church and studied. Then he would see if it was possible to have the effects of transmutation change from devil to angel. Then the angels would have the same advantage as the devils, with the fallen angels being the furthest behind, thus increasing their chances in any future war that might happen. It might also be possible to find a way to reverse the process and turn devils into humans if they used to be humans before becoming devils, or whatever species they had been. Naruto watched as Rias also took out a rook, a knight, and a pawn before placing them on the table next to the bishop piece that Naruto had switched out. She seemed to look between the pieces in him, before she smiled. I see. Well, I am happy to inform you that I am not human. Nobody in this room is a human, Rias said as she got up, while the rest of the people in the room got up and turned around so that they could line up behind the couch, giving Naruto another chance to switch the pieces with pieces that looked exactly the same. It was hard for them to analyze a single piece and find a way to copy it, so it would be better to take a few of them of different types and effects before sending them to be examined for ways to replicate them for a more holy purpose. Now that Rias and her group were lined up, they all spouted bat-like wings from their backs as they looked at Naruto with various expression. Hello, I'm Akino Himejima, and I am a devil. Akino greeted with a light bow, showing her Japanese heritage by being polite. Hey, Yudo Kiba, and I too am a devil. Yudo greeted with a thumbs up towards Naruto, who didn't react to it. He couldn't care less honestly. This boy just rubbed him the wrong way even without being a betrayer. Kaneko Tuju a devil. Kaneko said with the same neutral tone as always, while Rias stood at the front of her group with a smirk of confidence. And I am Rias Gremory, the heiress to the house of Gremory. I am also a devil, nice to meet you. Rias greeted, before everyone's wings vanished into nothing. Rias looked at Naruto expecting him to be shocked, but instead, they all watched as he didn't react to them. Naruto simply had an eyebrow raised, before he stood up and reached into his pocket and pulled out a small bottle of holy water. Rias was the first to back away when she realized what that was, while Naruto reached into his shirt and pulled out the silver cross beneath the cloth. Naruto Korda, member of the Catholic Church. So boy, are we friends now that you know that I am a loyal member of the church? Naruto asked, bringing up the fact that the boy Yudo had called them all friends without thinking about who he was talking to. Rias was backing away slightly at the shock of her own mistake, before she gained courage and stood her ground in front of her. They all gained confused looks before they saw Naruto place the bottle into the palm of his hand and into his pocket, before he placed the cross back in his church. Just messing with you idiots, the bottle is just hand sanitizer, and the cross was a birthday gift from my mother. Naruto said with complete honesty. He did in fact use holy water to wash his hands, and the cross was a birthday present from when the mother then had raised him, so either of his statements were false. Ha ha ha, you had me there for a moment, Korda-san. Rias said with a sigh of relief, having sensed no lies from Naruto when he had been talking, something that Naruto wanted her to believe. She was now none the wiser to the fact that she was missing 4 of her important evil pieces, while Naruto painted himself as a bit of a joker, while if she ever tried to use those pieces then she would be very disappointed with the outcome. Not only would he fail, but she would have no idea what went wrong until it was too late. He had also assured that Rias wouldn't be able to turn at least 4 people into devils, meaning that 4 less devils to deal with in the future. What did you want to talk to me about anyway? Naruto asked with his arms crossed, and he then noticed that Kaneko was sitting next to him while grabbing onto his pants with her hand for some reason. Right to the point, your energy is very potent and large. For a human that is something extremely noteworthy. In fact, I have never met a person with as much raw energy as you before. I would like to add you to my peerage. Oh, I forgot. A peerage means that I would be using one of these, Rias said with a hand gesturing to the chess pieces, which she believed were her evil pieces. Naruto so wished that he could rub what he did in her face, but he was outnumbered, not to say they were stronger, they just had more people. It was also a smallish room that they knew better than him. Evil pieces, I can turn you into a devil, giving you amazing powers and a very long life. You can achieve some of your greatest desires, and you will be treated like family. Rias explained the most basic parts of it, not going into great detail. No thanks, not interested in becoming a devil. Naruto answered, with everyone looking at him like he was crazy again. Rias seemed to have some trouble believing that she had just been rejected that easily by somebody, and Naruto knew that he would never let himself become a devil by his own choice. Rias did not know what to do in this situation, so using the first thing that came to her mind she tried to play on the greed of human nature. Money, women, men. All of it can be yours. Devils don't look down on sin, even encourage it. You can fulfill whatever you lust after, items or sex, it doesn't matter. Rias bargained, while Naruto twitched in utter annoyance at how persistent this girl was. She didn't want to take no for an answer. I don't need those kinds of things. Do I look like the kind of person that can be so easily bought? Naruto asked, before his sweat dropped when he saw them looking at him a bit closer to try and actually see if they could tell or not. Naruto sat back down and took a cup of tea. He might as well see what else Rias would try and do to get him to join so that he could figure out the reason why she wanted him to join. He was so glad that his chakra covered up the exorcist and holy sword aura that he possessed, covering them both up in a way that even a devil this close wouldn't be able to sense it. He could whip his sword out, cut them all down, and they would only sense the sword the moment before their deaths. Honestly, you seem like a strong person that is easily bought with the idea of friendship. That is why I asked you in the first place. You seem lonely, like a person that once lost everything, but now serves a purpose he doesn't truly believe in. You just go through the motions and have even fooled yourself into thin, Rias started to say, before she was punched right in the cheek so hard that she was knocked from her spot and sent flying into the wall and a thump. Yudo jumped into action and rushed at Naruto, while Akino went to Rias' side. Yudo already had a sword drawn, so Naruto unhooked his belt and wrapped it around the sword blade before he kneed Yuto in the gut and winded him. Bucho, are you okay? Akino asked in concern, while a large bruise started to swell quickly on Rias' cheek while Naruto glared at her from across the room. Kaneko was the only person that had actually seen this coming from a mile away. You don't just tell a person they are tricking themselves, that they don't truly have a purpose in life, and not get hit. Should she have said something? Yes. Did she? No. And did she had a very good reason for it? Yes. Rias hadn't listened to Kaneko when she told her that Naruto seemed just like a fox, happy and lovable until you back it into a corner, then it will snap and bite at you. Rias had backed him into a corner, and stepped on a landmine at the same time when she brought up what she did. That, and what Rias said struck a little too close to home for Kaneko as well, so she herself thought that Rias needed to be knocked off her high horse when talking to a person that radiated such a powerful aura at all times. For most devils, they only radiated a strong aura after charging up power for an attack or spell. They weren't powered up at all times. The difference was that stronger devils could power up faster than weaker ones. But for somebody to be pouring out so much power that it can be sensed from across a city, that wasn't somebody you just backed into a corner. If you tried, then you needed to get knocked back to your senses. Yuto, stop it, I deserve that. I commented out of turn, and overstepped my boundaries. Cortisan told us earlier that we weren't friends, and I talked to him like a friend that knew him. I won't make that mistake again. I hope we can put this behind us now that you punched me? Rias asked with slight trouble, talking with her swollen cheek, majorly swollen in fact. That punch was strong enough to almost knock her out, and she hadn't sensed him using any of that energy inside of him to fuel the punch. It was a pure muscle power punch, meaning that she was lucky she didn't have her head removed from her neck because of how she had acted. Sometimes she forgot that the people she will talk to don't have to put up with her, and can hit her if she does something stupid. Most devils were afraid of being killed for the offense, and her own peerage would never hit her. That was pretty much the only types of contact she had with people, so she had forgotten that she can't speak her mind with everyone without thinking about how she worded things first. I punched you hard enough to feel better. Just because you have that body doesn't mean I won't knock your teeth in if you piss me off again. I don't care who you think you are, if you are royalty, male or female. If you push me, I am not afraid to punch you again or you either, so get that smirk off your face, Naruto said as he pointed to Akino, while Yuto started to stand up holding his gut lightly. Like Rias, he could feel a bruise already forming on his gut, since Naruto's chakra had powerful light qualities to it. Even without channeling chakra to his hits, his fists and body could inflict decent damage to a devil from a strong hit. Akino behind Rias stopped smirking for a moment, before she smiled again in a non-smirk way. She had learned from Rias' mistake, don't push somebody that seemed to be on a hair trigger. Little did they know, the only time Naruto had a hair trigger was when he was surrounded by devils. Good, then I hope that you can at least think over my offer? Rias asked with a small smile as her hand went to her cheek and she used a spell to help reduce the swelling. She was going to have a killer headache in a little bit, and the side of her face she was punched on was completely numb, with tears leaking out of her eye, though that was from the stinging from the spell. I'm not interested, my mother would kill me if I became a devil, Naruto said as he stood up and started to walk out of the room, before he did leave and the door closed behind him. Naruto smirked to himself as he held up his hand and looked to himself to see 2 pawn pieces that he had stolen from Rias the second he punched her. When he had landed his hit, his other hand reached into the same skirt pocket. He saw that she kept the evil pieces and pulled out the 2 closest to the outer edge. He added them to the rook, bishop, knight, and the other pawn he had taken from her. True, he had lost his cool when he punched her, but it was as he threw the punch that he realized he could use the chance to steal from her and strengthen the angel's chances of finding a way to negate and replicate the evil piece system, but with angels. Now he just needed to get the evil pieces to the higher-ups so that they could give them to the angels without bringing suspicion on them. Naruto twitched a few times, before he sighed and dropped the rook, 2 pawns, the knight, and the bishop on the ground. Curse his gut, and curse the fact that he couldn't just steal from somebody like this. Pawns had the ability to promote and gain the traits of the other pieces, meaning that to study all of the pieces, you only needed a single pawn to do it. He knew that what he was doing was wrong for his cause, but he knew that if he took more than needed then he would be well. He didn't exactly know what he was doing, so Naruto looked the evil pieces on the floor, before he saw them glow and vanish. His eyes widened for a moment, and he figured that Rias was able to summon the pieces to her. He looked at the pawn in his hand, which was covered by a thin coat of his chakra, meaning that Rias had noticed that her evil pieces were missing, or that when the chessboard was knocked over she didn't want to go through the trouble finding them all the hard way, so she just summoned them. The light properties of his chakra keeping the pawn in his hand from being summoned back to Rias, so getting out his holy water he uncorked it, and placed the entire pawn inside of the light-attributed water, and saw that it wasn't teleporting away. Like stealing or not, the angels needed a way to replenish their numbers, and basing a system off the evil piece system would cause a lot of good in the end. He didn't even feel guilty about it anymore. After all, what could one pawn change? 2 months of watching Issei from the shadows and they had gotten nothing on the child. Today was just another boring evening of Naruto watching as Issei walked around town with his new, and surprising, girlfriend that had appeared out of nowhere. The girl was obviously a fallen angel, but she had made no moves against Issei that were either violent or suspicious yet. She didn't even seem to notice that Naruto was watching them yet, or she did, and she was making sure not to make any suspicious moves while Naruto was around. These last 2 months had been boring, but he could also tell that Rias had been ordering the girl, Kaneko, to watch Naruto's every move to make sure that he wasn't up to anything at school. She had continued to bug him to become a member of her peerage, and every time the answer was always no. The girl didn't seem to have noticed that her pawn had been switched out, mostly because she might have mistaken one of her real chess pieces for the pawn that got switched. Funny, because should she ever have need for that pawn then it would not be working like she would have wanted it to. Zenovia was annoyed when Naruto informed her that he had been offered that, but she was glad he said no. The church that Zenovia had been working on had been completely restored to its former glory in the 2 months that she had been working on it, and making repairs with the money that was sent to them on a regular basis from the home base. Speaking of the pawn that Naruto sent, the examination had been finished a while back and the pawn had been sent back to Naruto last week. The results, amazing. The angels had been able to perfectly replicate the evil piece system and turn it into something that they could also use in the future. Naruto had even sent his own suggestion for what it could be styled after, since the devils used chess as the basis for their system, which allowed for them to turn 15 people, not counting the king, into devils. He had suggested they use something that could be mocking to the devils and grant them a higher number of angels at the same time. The angel player system used 20 pieces called tenshi-koma, angel pieces, that were based off the Japanese version of chess, shogi. The angel that owned these pieces would also take the position of king, but unlike normal chess that would leave them with 19 pieces that would be able to turn other species into angels. Naruto was so proud of the fact that his idea had been used in the making of the system that would shift the flow of power between the factions. The pieces were somewhat similar to evil pieces, but they were lab-led as such: king, rook, bishop, gold general, silver general, knight, lance, and pawn. The king got no boost in power by being the king, and there could be only one king per peerage if that could be called as such. The rook, unlike with devils there was only one per set, would be like the devil's rooks and gain immense strength and durability. Like the pawn in chess, when this rook got into enemy territory it could promote and turn into a promoted rook, doubling its strength and increasing their speed. The bishop, like rook there was only one per set, would gain larger reserves of magic to use with their light magic they used to purify devils and fallen angels. Like the pawns of chess, they too could turn into a promoted bishop and their magic would condense to become more potent. The gold general, each set contained 2 of these per set, and they were given a large boost to their durability, magical resistance, and strength. They had the weakness though that their magical reserves took a small dip, using a portion of their magic to add to their magical resistance. They did not have the ability to promote. The silver general, each set contained 2 of these per set, and they gained increased strength and magical power, but their durability stayed the same. Like the pawns in chess, they could promote, and when they did their physical strength doubled and they got the durability of the rook. The knight, each set contained 2 of these per set, and they gained amazing boosts to their speed. They were like the devil evil pieces in how they only really got a speed boost, but when in enemy territory they could promote like the pawn and gain a boost to their speed. The lance, each set contained 2 of these per set, and they gained a boosted speed and durability, either to the level of a knight or rook. They could further increase their power by landing in enemy territory and promoting to gain a boost in attack power. Finally there was the pawn, and each set contained 9 of these per set. Like with a normal set these were the weakest piece when not promoted in enemy territory. Unlike with evil pieces, when a pawn entered enemy territory they were forced to promote, and they could not choose what they promoted to. They were forced into promoting into a promoted pawn, but when they promoted they gained the same traits as the gold general. Like with the evil piece system, these tenshi-koma couldn't be used to reincarnate a god or Buddha, but different pieces could be used to reincarnate people of different strength depending on how they were used. Just like how the various pieces of the evil piece system were given different values, the angel player system gave its pieces different values as well. Rook 9 pawns, bishop 8 pawns, gold general 6 pawns, silver general 5 pawns, knight 4 pawns, lance 3 pawns, and pawns were worth 1 pawn each obviously. With this new system they could not only rebuild the angels up, but increase the power of their fraction even faster than the devils had been building theirs up since they had even more pieces per angel to use. Unlike the devils who could only turn 15 people per set, the angels could turn 19 people with a single set. Better yet, unlike with evil pieces and turning people into slaves for the devil that turned them, those turned by angels would not be forced into obeying the angel that turned them, or follow every order they give or risk being punished. That was because the angels didn't believe in slavery, but they did believe in a system of balance. You would normally have to obey somebody with more wings than you anyway, so only angels with a high number of wings would be allowed to use these. Right now only the 4 great seraph would have access to the use of this angel player system, meaning that only Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel would be able to turn people into angels at this moment. If a war did break out though, this would easily be a deciding factor in the war between the factions. This girl though, she really sets off alarms. Naruto thought as he felt Zenovia come closer as well. Since there was literally nothing left for her to clean in the church, she must have decided that she wanted to come with Naruto and see what was going on with Issei. Naruto heard Zenovia land next to him, before he saw that she was holding a file in her hands. It must be the file for the fallen angel girl down below, and Zenovia opened the file. Headquarters just sent a few files on some fallen angels that went rogue from Gregory, and the new orders to get rid of them. These are strays that have left the Gregory, making them fair game. Zenovia explained as she gave Naruto 4 files with the pictures of 4 fallen angels on them. Naruto looked at the top file and saw that it looked very similar to the girl that had recently approached Issei. She was a pretty young woman in her late teens with strange revealing clothes and a single pair of black wings, her hair being the usual fallen angel black with her eyes being violet. Raina age, 417 sex, female race, fallen angel, ex-angel number of wings, 2 Danasik age, 743 sex, male race, fallen angel, ex-angel number of wings, 2 Calawarner age, 458 sex, female race, fallen angel, ex-angel number of wings, 2 Middle age, 435 sex, female race, fallen angel, ex-angel number of wings 2. Not really anything special if they only have 2 wings each, these are mere cannon fodder. Though, it looks like the one Rainer has taken an interest in Issei. Do we have any new information besides this? Naruto asked as he started to look at the files. The spies inside of the Gregory did good work, gathering information quickly so that they could send it to the field agents and work their way towards redemption. Just like it was possible for an angel to fall and become a fallen angel, it was possible for a fallen angel to redeem themselves and become an angel once more when they work off their sins. Though this was only the case for fallen angels that became such for committing sin, fallen angels that were born that way couldn't ever find redemption. No information. It would seem that Azazel was not the one to order the Excalibur swords to be stolen like suspected though. Nothing new though, Azazel doesn't want to start another war. Zenovia explained to Naruto, and he nodded lightly. That sounded about right. The other swords were safe at the moment it would seem, though that might be because Griselda was the one keeping watch on them with another Excalibur sword user with her. Naruto would also know the second that they were stolen when his book told him that their location changed. I see, then the fallen angels aren't going after Issei because he is a natural holy sword user, meaning he has a sacred gear. Too bad the kid is a person that isn't with the church. Go back home and prepare the extraction process. I will get Issei. Hopefully my runes will work. Naruto muttered to himself at the end. He had been working on a way to take out a sacred gear without killing the host, though chances of it working were only about 40%, so the boy's luck would determine how this turned out. If he was lucky, he would survive this whole ordeal and be none the wiser about the supernatural world, living a normal and healthy life that didn't involve constant danger. Are you going to take care of the fallen angels? Zenovia asked with a raised brow, while Naruto nodded and stood up. He was already out of school uniform to show his normal clothes underneath, the revealing black unitard that were skin tight, and the black skinny jeans with the exorcism belt he wore with his holy water bottles and rune book. His Excalibur mimic was taking the form of sunglasses on his face again, and he couldn't help but grin. They will be taken care of when found, the first would be Rainier. It would be a good way to test if the Tenshi Koma work on a fallen angel with a live subject before any human testing is done. Naruto said as the two of them got into position. With a burst of speed the two of them set off and raced towards both Rainier and Issei, who were standing in a park near the water fountain. Rainier actually noticed them and jumped out of the way in surprise when Naruto almost tagged her with a hard punch to the face. Man or woman, you don't hold back on enemies because of a little thing like sex. Naruto believed this only applied for fallen angels and devil scum. Human women were a different matter. Issei managed to say, before he was knocked out by a punch to the back of the head from Zenovia, who caught Issei's fallen form before it hit the ground and started to run off in the other direction. Naruto saw Rainier form a pink spear of light in her hand with the obvious plans at throwing it at Zenovia's back. But Naruto turned Excalibur mimic into its sword form and cut the spear in half, dissipating it, before she could even throw it towards them. Naruto grabbed Rainier by the arm roughly and pulled her in close with the tip of his sword pressing into her throat. She used her other hand to make a spear of light and tried to stab him in the face. Naruto ducked under the stab without letting go of her arm, before he rammed his shoulder into her gut and made her grunt. Naruto rammed his hand up and into her chin, before she went flying and landed in the water of the fountain. Naruto didn't let up on his assault though, as he jumped into the fountain right in front of her and sat on her stomach and grabbed the handle of his sword with both hands as he placed at the center of her chest, his legs pressing against her elbows to keep her from trying to stab him again. "Who are you, and why are you interfering with my date?" Raina asked in what was a cute and innocent schoolgirl's voice, but to him he could tell that she was hiding her real voice so that she would trick a person like Issei more easily. The voices of fallen angels were described to be seductive, and could make a male weak at the knees. The way she talked was more annoying than anything, and didn't have even a fraction of the seductive quality it should have had. "I'm not sorry in the slightest, but my mission involved Issei. His sacred gear will be extracted and taken by to the church, and you will die by my Excalibur sword," Naruto said, informing her that he was holding a very powerful sword above her chest. The gasp that came from her mouth was more than enough for her to understand what kind of position she was in right now. Naruto could see her trying to find a way out of this situation, but Naruto rolled his eyes and took a vial of holy water out of his belt and uncorked it. Naruto poured half of the bottle into his mouth, before he started to spit it right into her face. "Gross. Why would you my disguise?" Raina shouted when her voice lowered to a more low and seductive voice, and her face took on her proper physical age. Instead of the innocent girl look she had been going for, her body grew a little taller, taking on a more mature appearance with her bust growing bigger than it was before. Her eyes changed, taking on a darker look to them than before. Naruto's eye twitched lightly when he looked her up and down to see her clothes ripping apart, showing that they had been a disguise as well. Her height finished changing, putting her at the same height as Naruto, and her clothes completely shredded apart, and vanished as well, revealing her soft skin and large breasts that were bigger than even Rias but not as big as Akino's. New clothes rapidly started to form over her body, and her pink were the first thing to get covered when 2 leather straps went around her chest and covered only a small fraction of her breasts, leaving the top and bottom of them exposed, with the 2 leather straps going around her ribs under her breasts for some form of protection for her ribs and not the rest of her torso. Naruto's sweat dropped when he realized that her breasts looked like they could literally spill out of her top, if it could be called that, at any moment. Even the unitards Naruto, Zenovia, and Irena wore were less revealing than this, and their clothes were skin tight. There was so much skin showing on Raina that only an idiot would fight in this. Way, around her waist was a thong that barely covered her crotch, and most likely barely covered anything on her rear, and it was held up by 3 very tight straps on her hips. You could even see how tight they were pressing into her hips and butt. She had on thigh-high high-heeled boots, and bicep-high black gloves with black leather straps on them in random location. She had a leather strap around her neck that connected to a silver circle with straps on it that connected to the medium-sized shoulder pads that she wore, in black. Coming out of the right shoulder protector was 3 large spikes lines up, while the left was more curved down and tame, with no spikes. This might be rude, but what possessed you to think wearing this as your battle attire was a good idea? Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow. New outfit or not, he wouldn't hold back on killing her just because she was beautiful. If anything, it ticked him off even more that this beauty was a fallen angel, and thus, was not viable girl fiend material. It was a shame though he didn't hate fallen angels nearly as much as he hated devils. Fallen angels had more of his pity than his hatred, the only reason he hated them being that they seduced normal angels into becoming fallen angels. "These are my normal clothes," Raina informed him with a forced neutral tone, but she was silently thanking the fact she was wet from the fountain so that he couldn't see her sweating. Naruto sent her a look at the fact these were her normal clothes, before he sighed and used a single hand to reach for his rune book at his waist and pull it out. He started to look through the pages, flipping through them with a single thumb, before he found what he was looking for. Akiats Lafnal Nail Dan Ibnarichi Ilfide Iman. Naruto chanted out as the runes on the pages started to copy and float over to Raina, with her squirming under him to try and get away from the floating letters that started to enter her mouth before they imprinted onto her tongue in the form of a whirlpool made from the letters of the runes he just used. The runes also went towards Naruto and floated onto his tongue, before they imprinted on the roof of his mouth instead of his tongue. Runes were his specialty, and this book was the medium he used to create and control them. Without it he was unable to create them, but he could activate ones he already made. "What did you do to me?" Raina shouted at him, before Naruto rolled his eyes and stood up from her and opened his mouth. "Don't move," Naruto ordered just as she was about to create a weapon and attempt to kill him, and her arms stopped moving before she could even finish making a weapon. She looked stunned at this new development, before Naruto crossed his arms. "These are master and slave runes. With them I can make or anyone weaker than myself my slave that has to obey my every order. I can't just have you running around free, and this is easier than keeping you subdued until my mission ends," Naruto explained with a grunt of annoyance. He only made this rune for the sole purpose of restraining prisoners, making sure they literally couldn't run away from him, try to attack him, or try and signal for help. It would make taking her back as his prisoner much easier. "Now I remember, you are one of the church's 2 power idiots. You rush into a fight without thinking half of the time, and have been known for the strange ability to kill devils without using a sword or a sacred gear. Hey boy, why do you side with the church? Why not join a side that will reward you much better for your skills?" Raina offered with a smirk on her face. Violence was obviously not going to work when she remembered the reputation this guy had for killing devils even without his sword. The boy had once ripped the wings off a fallen angel with 4 wings before, so she stood no chance in a straight-up contest of strength with somebody with a rock-hard body like this. I side with the people that fed me, clothed me, and loved me when nobody else would. I don't need to be rewarded for my actions. I do this to pay them back for everything they did for me. As long as the church wants me, then I will always work for them, Naruto said with narrowed eyes. Naruto released his order and allowed Raina to move again so that she could stand up, before he sensed a small flash of killing intent from her. Naruto narrowed his eyes at her, and with his strong stare she backed away lightly and calmed down her urge to kill. You are better than those pathetic humans. Without sacred gears or weapons given to them, they can't do anything on their own. Why would you side with people that are destined to doom themselves? Raina questioned, while Naruto thought about it for half a second and came up with the answer. You are not allowed to attack me, anyone from the church, humans, angels, or anyone that didn't attack you first without my permission. You are not allowed to run away, and to do so will cause you to freeze up until you will yourself to return to my side. You are not allowed to try and contact your allies and warn them, or request for them to help you. Finally, I side with who I want to side for my own reason. Oh, and the distance limit you are allowed to be away from me is 30 meters. Naruto said, giving her the restriction that she would not be allowed to get around. He wasn't a complete dick when it came to his enemies. He would give her a limited amount of freedom so that she had a relative form of comfort. So long as she was a good girl and caused no trouble, Naruto could take her back to the church and they could test the Tenshi Koma on her to see if they could turn fallen angels into heavenly angels. She was a very valuable asset, a free fallen angel that was no longer under the control of the Gremory. She was a free agent, and they could do what they wanted to her without a war being started up. Not to mention she only had 2 wings. That was the normal lowest amount an angel or fallen angel could have minus those weird ones that only had 1 wing on their backs. Hey, you didn't say anything about devils. So I guess you wouldn't care if I killed a few of them? Raina taunted, trying to get a rise out of Naruto. I don't care. If you kill some devils, then more power to you. I can't kill them without them attacking me first as per orders, but my orders don't apply to you, Naruto said simply. He just cared if she tried to kill his allies. If she tried to kill his enemies, then he couldn't care less who she killed or why she killed them. With the angel player system now up and running, with those 2 boring months watching Issei with no changes being what he had to put up with, the angels could not afford to go to war with devils should the need arise. With all of the exorcists in the world, the angels had an army of potential angels to choose from. Not to mention that if it was possible to let fallen angels turn back into angels, they could completely wipe out the fallen angels in a peaceful way that would turn the fight from angels fallen angels devils to angels devils in the fight. Having the fallen angels back on their side as angels, now that would truly change the way this world went. The devils wouldn't just have to fight against the angels and exorcists, they would also be in a pure war against ex-fallen angels turned angels with power boosts, angels, exorcists, holy sword users, humans with sacred gears, and who knows what else. Hey, you have the eyes of a killer, I like that. I am surprised somebody like you is in the church. You would be such a good rogue priest, and you could kill devils without having to be ordered to do it, Raina stated with a sharp-toothed grin, even her normally flat teeth turning pointed, with her canines growing larger with a certain bloodlust behind her voice. Her irises having shrank as they started to glow red, before she calmed herself down, and the changes returned back to the sexy appearance. Don't misunderstand me. I don't enjoy killing anything that isn't a devil or fallen angel. I have seen the horrible things devils and your kind do to humans when you lose control. I kill them, before they go mad and kill innocents. Naruto growled lowly. He was able to remember his first mission very well, when he had seen a mutated stray devil ripping humans apart, and eating them while they were still partly alive. He had seen what happens when a fallen angel seduces a person just to ruin their lives. He had seen what could happen to people at the hands of these creatures, while the angels always thought of what was best for humanity. Why wouldn't he side with the people that did what was best for others, instead of do what was best for themselves? Even a kind devil was still a devil. They manipulated people into doing what they wanted them to do. People like Rias Gremory acted with the belief that they were different from other devils, but she was still a devil, and she still relied on human desire like the rest of them. When a human contracted a devil, they didn't know it, but it weighed against them as a sin. The more times they contracted with devils, the more their actions weighed against them. Not only that, but they fed on human desire to grow stronger when they could just train themselves without having to taint the souls of others. Yes, those sins could be forgiven, but it was still an addicting thing to make a contract with the devil. They would just keep making more and more contracts, because having your desires fulfilled made them lazy, and then they became reliant on the devils to fulfill their desires for them. Soon, they would forget how to work hard for the things they had. Sheesh, you seem to really hate devils. I think that you and I are going to get along just fine, Raina said after a moment. She had to admit that a guy that seemed to hate devils this much, while not being an insane asshole, with a past of killing devils without mercy, was somebody that she could totally see herself trying to seduce, and actually meaning it. She could see the bulge at the front of those tight jeans, and she could see they had similar tastes in revealing clothing. They also weren't afraid of killing people, and would gladly put every devil's head on a silver plate with smiles on their faces. She knew he would deny having anything in common with her, but she could feel that massive power brimming under and over the surface of his skin. She could also feel the cat-addicting power that was hiding in his gut, the dark and menacing power that spoke of hidden rage and anger. This was a man after her own heart, somebody that she could see herself getting into. Come on, I have things I have to get done. Then you are going to tell me everything you had planned, and have planned for the future. Naruto said as he turned his back, knowing she couldn't attack him and that she had to follow him made things easier for him. Reina licked her lips at his truly demanding tone. She just loved a man that took charge. Naruto smiled lightly when he stepped in front of the knocked-out Issei. Zenovia had done her job very well in tying Issei up to the center cross in the church, and the boy's shirt was removed so that Naruto could start to place the runes on the boy for the hopefully safe extraction. Naruto really hoped that this boy survived and got himself a nice life after this. The boy deserved the right to a normal life where he wouldn't be targeted by tons of people that saw him as a threat or wanted to make him a slave. It would be best for this normal human boy to lead a normal life, get a wife one day and have his own family without having to worry about a war between the factions. In Naruto's opinion, he was saving this boy from a fate that was worse than death. Naruto had been destined for the kind of life he led. He was born in a country where people killed each other for money, so there was no way he could have ever lived a normal life. Issei Hayato was a human boy that was unlucky enough to have been born with a sacred gear. Naruto would remove it and grant the boy the right to choose how he lives his life, lusting after breasts or calming down one day and becoming a man worthy of the race they shared. Naruto saw the potential in Issei to become a great person, but so long as the boy had his sacred gear, he could never have the kind of life Naruto himself sometimes wished he had. A nice quiet life without all of the fighting caused by the devils, fallen angels, and even humans. He knew though that he owed his life to the church for raising him and loving him, so he made the choice to give up his right to have a peaceful life when he sided with one of the factions. Hey, it looks like we are going to have company soon, Zenovia stated after a moment when she looked outside the window and saw some people in the distance flying towards them. The figures were too big to be birds, so it was easy to guess that they were the fallen angels that had betrayed the Gremory. Naruto didn't even have to tell Zenovia what to do as she summoned Excalibur Destruction and made her way out of the church so that she could meet up with the enemies. She would take care of them while Naruto took care of the extraction process, which he had already started by opening his book to the back of the entire thing, the pages that centered around extracting sacred gears. The extraction began by having Naruto chant under his breath as the words on his book glowed before copies of the runes started to float into the air and fly towards Issei. 5 separate streams of runes flew at them. One line of runes wrapped around each bicep, one went around his neck with the other going around his waist. These runes glowed as they connected to his skin, and the final rune started to curve on his stomach in a circle made of runes. The runes on the stomach filled in completely so that it looked like a giant black spot appeared on Issei's gut. Naruto looked at it for a moment, before he grit his teeth and pressed his hand into Issei's stomach. No kidding, like water, Naruto's hand was going into the inky blackness of the portal into Issei's soul so that he could rip the sacred gear from Issei manually. Naruto could feel his own chakra getting drained so that Issei's soul would heal itself while he ripped it apart. The runes were made to transfer parts of Naruto's chakra into Issei and repair any damage to the male's soul that would have caused him to die from a normal extraction. This was why it was a 40% chance of surviving. Naruto's own energy would have to be at least slightly compatible with Issei's soul so that he could repair the actual damage he caused. Naruto groaned at how weird this was, even though it was like his third time extracting a sacred gear from somebody. This would be the first time that it took more than a few seconds. The other 2 people had not lived through the experience. Of course, those 2 people had been trying to side with the devils and use their sacred gears to get revenge on the church for kicking them out. Naruto didn't keep either of the sacred gears, preferring to seal them away deep in the catacombs than actually use them himself. They were rather common sacred gears, so there had been no reason for him to keep them himself. The more powerful the sacred gear though, the higher the chance of survival for the host. Naruto's own energy was super powerful, so only a super powerful soul capable of holding a powerful sacred gear was able to use even part of his chakra to repair their souls properly. People with energy too weak would become overcome with power and madness, before dying quickly and painfully. Naruto felt around inside of Issei's soul for anything that could be the sacred gear. He was already up to his elbow and reaching in deeper to try and rip the gear out as peacefully as he could. Naruto felt something warm a few moments later, before he grabbed something that seemed to have a good amount of heat rushing off of it. Naruto's glove protected his palms from most of the heat, while his fingers could feel it burning a bit more. Naruto grit his teeth when he felt something bite onto the exposed part of his arm that was inside of Issei's soul, not protected by his glove. Just for that, he was going to kick the ass of whatever just bit him. Why the hell did something just bite him? His chakra was being drained at an even greater rate when he grabbed onto whatever had bitten him even tighter, only for his hand to get bitten. Naruto blinked when he felt a small piece of Issei's soul tear off and enter his body, fusing with a part of his soul strangely enough. Naruto had no clue what that was about, But he started to yank on the thing he had in his hand, while his chakra was being drained from him at a fast rate. The fallen angels had a better method of pulling out sacred gears, that much was for sure, but at least Naruto's way had a chance of keeping the host alive. "Stop biting me, I am trying to give your host a normal life," Naruto shouted into the portal into Issei's soul, irritation at being bitten over and over starting to get to him. Naruto's arms started to come out of the portal, and on his bicep were bleeding bite marks that stained the floor of the room with his dripping blood. The wounds looked like it had been done by some kind of creature that had a mouth full of only sharp teeth. Naruto's eyes turned red as he tapped into that darker source of power inside of him, and the wounds on his arms sealed up quickly. Naruto's red eyes gained slit pupils and his whisker marks thickened at the use of this strange energy. But the second the wound-healed Naruto stopped using the energy, and his eyes turned back to normal, as did his whisker marks. Naruto learned that he could tap into that energy a long time ago, and that when he used it his body healed at a super accelerated rate. The dark chakra in him also caused him to get angry, so he tried to avoid using it until he could find a master of chakra to train him in the uses of chakra. It wouldn't do good for him to go on some kind of rampage, because this chakra made him too angry to tell friend from foe. It would seem his use of that energy had scared the shit out of what he was grabbing, because it froze up very quickly, making it easier for Naruto to pull the creature out. As more of Naruto's arms started to come out of the hole in Issei, the creature started to turn into energy. In Naruto's hand was a red tail, a dragon's tail, and it was thicker so he could assume that this tail belonged to a dragon that was Western in appearance. The energy was shaky in certain areas to show scales, while the underside of the tail was a lighter red and wavy to show the softer part of the scales. Naruto saw Issei's left arm glow as a green orb appeared above his palm, before it soared into Naruto's other open palm. Naruto looked at the orb, before he felt the dragon's grip on its house loosen enough for Naruto to yank most of its body out of the boy with one pull. This wasn't the real size of the dragon, but more of a condensed version of this fragment of the dragon's soul. Naruto saw that most of the dragon's energy body was red, and it had 4 legs with claws that showed it was a Western dragon. 2 wings sprouted from its back, and it had a thick neck that got thinner the closer it got to the head, which was still inside of Issei. Naruto blinked when he realized this sacred gear was none other than one of the 13 Longinus, sacred gear with the potential to give their users the power to kill a god or Buddha. Of course, just having this sacred gear never promised that you would have that amount of power, just that you had the potential for the power. The fact that the humans using them were normally still human sure that they almost never really realized that potential, but some of the people with these gears did realize what they could. Naruto was forced into learning about all kinds of sacred gears, but he focused on learning about the more powerful sacred gears out there. This was none other than the sacred gear named the Boosted Gear. The Boosted Gear, also known as the Red Dragon Emperor's Gauntlet, was a mid-tier level Longinus that housed the soul of Drake the Welsh dragon inside of it. The main ability of this sacred gear was to double the user's power every 10 seconds and stores most of that doubled power away until the user wanted to unleash it in a big burst. It had the potential to boost the user's power to the point they could defeat a god or Buddha, but the charge-up time was what made it hard to use. It was also a big drain on the user's stamina, and your body could only boost itself so many times before you could no longer boost. When you reached your limit, the longer you use it, the greater the degree of drain. This sacred gear also had the weakness that its user gained a weakness to the same things that dragons were weak against. The True Longinus, Zenith Tempest, Annihilation Maker, Dimension Lost, Boosted Gear, Divine Dividing, Regulus Nemia, Canis Lycaon, Sephiroth Grawl, Incinerate Anthem, Absolute Demise, Innovate Clear, and Telos Karma were the 13 Longinus in order of strongest to weakest. Issei, you are lucky I am doing this for you. The Boosted Gear and the Divine Dividing are well known for fighting against each other in death matches. You may have the Red Dragon Emperor, but you may lose your life against the White Dragon Emperor's wielder. Naruto thought as Drake seemed to struggle again, before Naruto completely pulled the energy dragon out of Issei. The green orb in Naruto's hand turned into energy, and shot towards the exposed energy head of the condensed dragon. The energy dragon had green glowing eyes, so Naruto used his free hand to close the portal to Issei's soul, cutting off any chance of escape that Drake had. The dragon stopped struggling when it realized that it was starting to fade away into nothing as its energy vanished. It had no voice to talk with right now, so Naruto groaned in pain when the dragon turned around and sank its fangs into his hand again. Naruto saw the energy of the dragon flow into him through the open wound, and the energy condensed even further as it glowed brighter, syncing up with Naruto's energy as it fused with Naruto. The blonde male groaned and fell to his knees while grabbing his arm when the veins started to bulge on the very same arm with the wound sealing up when the dragon was fully gone. Naruto closed his eyes and focused on his own chakra. Like a world of its own, Naruto could feel the dragon fusing the boosted gear becoming a part of him. This was not supposed to happen. Naruto had plans on taking the boosted gear back to the Vatican so that it could be sealed away. Naruto was the only person that could do this ritual, and to do it on himself was impossible. Naruto's eye twitched in annoyance at how he was now the wielder of the boosted gear, when he didn't even want to be its wielder. Naruto facepalmed when he realized that now he had the same weaknesses as a dragon great. He didn't even want this sacred gear, and now he had its strengths and weaknesses. Great, just great. Well, at least Issei was still alive. He made his life harder but trying to give this guy a normal life, and a chance to live without facing danger every single day. Now he would be in danger every single day from people. Oh, who was he kidding? He was naturally in danger almost every day anyway. He could only hope that Zenovia was having fun right now. With Zenovia, I was worried for a moment when I saw there would be 3 of you, but this was just pathetic. Zenovia said with a scowl on her face when she looked at the piles of feathers on the ground in front of her of different shades of darkness. She had her sword wrapped up again. All it took was a single cut each, and she had killed all 3 fallen angels with no mercy. Unlike Naruto, she saw zero purpose in letting them live. She was fully against letting Raina live, but she trusted Naruto's judgment in this. That did not mean that she would make the same choices. Naruto was much kinder in the mercy he gave to fallen angels that could be useful. Raina was a good test subject for the angel turning process, so of course she would be taken alive. Only 1 test subject was needed though, so she killed off these fallen angels. There was no reason to keep them alive, and transporting them back home would mean wasting more money. Killing them was just a way to save money, and because there was no purpose to letting them live, nothing personal against them. But it was far more effective to just kill them now than let them live and think that they would be able to do something later. This was boring though. It would take at least a 4 or 6 winged fallen angel to pose at least a small challenge to her. Those with 2 wings were cannon fodder at best, with only enough power to take care of normal exorcists, not those trained to be the best of the best. These runts were nothing more than a small annoyance to somebody that had been trained by Griselda, one of the top 5 female exorcists in the entire world. She trained with Naruto almost every day, and she was his rival in the arts of using swords. The only reason she was weaker than him was because he had more natural brute force than her, and could enhance his own body even further. Though she had some freaky brute punching power of her own, she was by no means a martial artist. The art never really appealed to her like it had Naruto, but she did have some very basic hand-to-hand so that she could survive long enough to get her sword if she ever dropped it in battle. Zenovia picked up 3 different shades of black feathers and started to walk back to the church. Now all they had to do was report this to the Vatican and wait for them to send the orders for them to return home.